In a world full of monsters that strike fear into those who see them, Marin, our main character, fights an orc with a party, and together, they kill the creature. After taking it down, they confirm they are all well and good, and thank Marin for his help as their vanguard. He irks them out by chopping off the orc's arm, skinning it, and boiling it slowly to remove the gamey odor. Right after, he cuts the finished meat into bite-sized pieces and stir-fries it together with noodles. His party members who have seen him cook monsters on several occasions can't stand the sight, and they wonder why he can't just eat normal food like an average person. Marin garnishes the pasta and then happily digs into it. One of the party members asks him if he's enjoying it, and Marin offers her to try some, but she instantly turns him down. He continues savoring the food and notes that the others are missing. While at it, his party members talk about a fallen hero whose body has recently been found in the southern Tirsan forest. This surprised the other members because one of them had recently passed through the Forest L, and it also seemed weird for a hero with so much promise to get killed, so they wondered how strong the monsters out there are. Curious, the same girl who wanted to know if Marin really liked what he was eating asks him why he started eating monsters. 3 months ago, in a small southern village, the merchants and traders who transport goods to and from the village complained after learning that the regular carriages were suspended as a result of a red boar's recent appearance. For that reason, they refused to leave town, and they informed the other villagers who were looking for a ride to try somewhere else. Left with no choice, the villagers cancel their plans, and the merchant company wonders how to deliver some goods to them, because it belongs to a noble. As they complain about their predicament, they see Marin trying to book a ride also, but he's shunned by a carriage owner, so they collude among themselves and plan to hire him, since he looks strong enough. At first, Marin's shabby outfit almost costs him the job, but the traders can't be too picky, given their condition, so they call out to him and ask him where he's headed. Once Marin tells them he's going to a drama, they inform him they have a merchant group heading there, but rather than Marin having to pay, they'd like him to join them to their destination, which of course he'll get free meals. Skeptical, Marin asks about the situation on the ground, but the merchant plays it safe by coming to a common ground with him, and with that, Marin agrees to go along. He gets on board, and the merchant tells him to wait till noon, because they want to find as many travelers as possible before departing. There, the merchant introduces himself as Maham, and Marin does the same. After they leave him to recruit more travelers, Maham seems scared of Marin and hopes he isn't a deserter, but his colleague doesn't care as long as Marin can fight monsters. The man then tells Maham to recruit more mercenaries if he's that terrified. In that short time, Marin naps, and he recollects seeing the hero badly injured and unable to move, and he wondered how things ended up in such a way. Hearing footsteps from behind, Marin fearfully turned around and saw a giant spider monster coming close, so he cried out in fear, saying he didn't want to die and he wanted to go to a drama. Suddenly, Maham wakes him up, and Marin learns that the carriage is filled with people and has embarked on their journey. There, Marin learns the other mercenaries are going to Heruam and Adrama, respectively. Curious, Maham asks him where he's headed in Adrama, and Marin informs them that he's going to the St. Rias orphanage to see his family, whom he hasn't been able to visit for a long time. Surprised to learn that the city has an orphanage, the mercenaries ask one another to know more about it. But one of them changes the subject and curiously asks Marin's level. He explains that it's easier to work together if they know each other's abilities, and a level is a number that helps the user see their own strength through the status window. The elder brings out his stats and tells Marin he is level 23, believing that Marin isn't anywhere close, so he advises Marin to work hard if he wants to attain such a level. But Marin checks his status and discovers that he's level 95. Suddenly the carriage halts abruptly, and the rider informs them of the red boar charging at them. They get off the carriage, and the elder mercenary barks out orders to the others, telling them to lure the boar away from the carriage, but they discover that it's already close, so the others scramble from the vehicle. When Marin sights the boar, he notes it's a bit strange from the regular boar, so he checks the boar's stats using the appraisal skill and learns the monster is level 62. Realizing the gap between them, Marin calls it the perfect chance to test a move on it. So he dashes over to the boar, ignoring the elder's warning. And when the boar closes the distance between them, Marin cuts the boar in two with just a sword swing. The boar being an easy kill shocks him and the other mercenaries. The elder then praises Marin for a job well done, and he pats Marin a little too hard, while questioning the boy's race. And when Marin is about to reveal it, everybody pauses. But then the mercenary laughs it off and tells Marin to join them for a meal. After he leaves, Marin looks at his palm, surprised by the power he had used. Later that evening, as they prepare dinner, the fellow travelers whisper amongst themselves, wondering who Marin is. Mayhem even joins in, thinking Marin was wielding a legendary sword, but the mercenary archer tells him it's best if they ask Marin. When they look back, they don't see him nearby, but moments later, they are terrified after seeing him drag the monster's corpse to their midst. In that instant, the archer confronts him, yelling at him for his actions, but Marin, confused, thought meat would be a better option. Still, he gets yelled at to put the monster away. Then he's offered porridge like the others to eat. One of them complains about losing his appetite after seeing the boar and warns Marin not to do such a thing again. Marin then tries the porridge, but it tastes so horrible that he ends up pissing off the archer when he complains about it. There, she explains to him how it's better than nothing, and warns him about the monster's meat, saying even though Marin can choose to ignore how gross the meat looks, it might be poisonous. She then shows him the group tying up the corpse and preparing to burn it. Recalling that Marin is heading to a drama, Archer advises him to eat up to save energy since their journey is still quite far. The men then call for her, asking her to light up the monster since their flames can't burn it. She goes to them, and Marin wonders why, but to his surprise, she uses magic to set the corpse ablaze. Impressed, the others wish to learn magic, and the archer tells them it's quite easy and useful for them. Maron walks up to her after watching her display and asks her if she's from the tower. She gets confused, and Maron tells her most mages come from the tower. But she reminds him that she's an archer. Confused because she used magic, Maron asks her about it. But the archer tells him that she used a basic spell, and such spells are exclusive to mages, and original magic takes 3 years to learn. Coming from a different paradigm, she asks Maron what era he is from and informs him that even simple adventurers can do basic magic like that. Maron still finds it hard to believe until she shows him a town that lights itself up using magic stones. Taken aback, Maron is shocked that such stones have replaced lamps, and the archer concludes that he must have come from a rural place, because even kids' toys run on magic these days. At this point, Maron looks like an old-timer, as he reflects on his childhood days when none of this stuff existed. He looks back and sees the other men wishing the monster meat were pork, because only then will they devour it. Days later, they arrive at Eastern Adrama and thank Maron for the safe journey. Maron, on the other hand, looks sick from not eating anything, and the others wonder if he has a contagious ailment, and it's the reason he's using a helmet. With that, Maham hands Maron a bag of potatoes and leaves. When Maron confirms what's in the bag, he dumps it on the floor and walks off looking for the orphanage. A wave of nostalgia hits him, even though the city looks different from how he remembers it. Still, he uses his muscle memory to navigate the terrain, eagerly walking to the orphanage, but to his surprise, the building he ends up seeing is a toy shop. Maron gets confused while examining the building until the shop owner comes out and asks Maron if he wants one of the toys inside. Maron then asks, as if confronting the man, if he knew where St. Rias's daycare went, but the shop owner says he has never heard of such, and he's the second-generation owner of the shop. Maron gets agitated, but then an old man calls him and tells him that he heard about the daycare existing long ago, but he hasn't seen one around. From what the geezer heard, the daycare had burned down in an attack by a certain dragon. From what Maron can remember about his previous life is that it wasn't remarkable and very bland, but at the moment of his passing, the warmth he felt was from the dinner table surrounded by family members who passed before him. The next time Maron opened his eyes after passing was in St. Rias daycare. He saw a fish toy right above his head, and he was surprised to learn that he had reincarnated. There, the sister carried him and welcomed Maron to the nursery, saying he's a part of the family henceforth. That was Maron's memory of the current world, and it was at the orphanage that he felt the warmth of family he thought he would never feel again. Fast forward a few years, and Maron had become an adventurer who earned money and donated to the orphanage to keep it running. The old sister, who took care of him, would tell him not to push himself too hard for their sake, but Maron would brush her off and tell her he was doing it because he wanted the kids at the orphanage to eat good food. He then promised to come back soon since his next mission was to fight some goblins in the south. She heard him out, but then made him promise to return so that he would get to try his favorite berry pie. Currently, a sister leads him to a grave that was built to honor the nursery victims of the dragon's attack. While noting that no one had visited the grave in a long time, she tries asking Maron about his relationship with them, but she is surprised when he kneels before the grave tree, so she excuses herself. There, Maron, in despair, reaches out to the tombstone and remembers how he failed to keep his promise. At the same time, he wonders if he would have been able to change their fates if he were present during the dragon's rampage. Rain falls, but Maron remains kneeling by the grave. Days later, the sister checks on him, noting that he must be in great pain for him to remain at the grave, so she throws him a loaf of bread, and when he bites it, he notes that it tastes awful, so he throws up. Realizing that he can't eat the normal food people are eating, Maron notes that his current condition is abnormal. There he remains crouched and notes that not only can he not satisfy his hunger, but he also lost his family again. Now that he's back to living such a miserable life, he wonders if maybe there's no point to living. Suddenly, he perceives a rich aroma which is different from normal meat. So he leaves the temple and goes to the alleyway, following the aroma. There he sees and hears two people discussing while burning monster meat. One of them, who is on the edge, complains about how they can be fined if discovered for burning such meat in the castle grounds. This is because it smells so identical to normal meat, and they do not know what would happen if a normal person tried it. While the two bicker back and forth, Maron snatches some of the burnt leftovers and runs off to the temple's graveyard. There, he cuts a piece of the meat and tries it. To his surprise, it doesn't taste awful, and this time around, his stomach can take it, so he digs into the meat, and by the time he finishes the piece with him, he grabs the main one and continues stuffing it into his mouth. He goes on and on till he eventually bites his arm without knowing. When he sees the hand bleeding, Maron falls to the ground and sobs, apologizing to his dead family for being the one to survive amongst them. Still, he notes that he wants to live happily and eat delicious food like a normal human being, but wonders if he has the right to do that. He suddenly feels a touch on his wound and then sees it's a leaf from the grave tree that has fallen on his hand. With that, he takes it as a sign, so he gets up and tells the grave that he will be leaving, but this time around he won't be late when coming back. This was the beginning of Maron's secret gourmet life. In a drama, there's a certain tower referred to as Hexalim. Hexalim is a well-known institution for adventurers, specializing in handling every aspect of their process, from dungeon exploration to monster subjugation. They're also well known for managing affiliate adventurers through a unified system. Because of the level of prestige Hexalim carries, only people who possess a certain level of skill or talent can register. One morning, an assessment test where candidates are required to punch a test golem as hard as they can is being conducted in the institution. During the test, a certain elf named Dahlia shows up to join the assessment. When it gets to Dahlia's turn, and he hits the test golem, to everyone's shock, he supersedes the high score by a milestone, making them wonder who he is. As a result of this feat, other candidates who have also qualified as adventurers start seeking ways to recruit him into their parties. Some even approach him and go ahead to offer him chances to join their guilds while touching him. Being a proud elf, Dahlia looks down on humans, so he gets seriously disgusted by the fact that some of them dared to touch him. Immediately, he brushes their hands away, but in the process, ends up bumping shoulders with Maron, who has just arrived. Marin immediately apologizes clumsily as he advances towards the podium to take his test. Noticing how tense he is, Dahlia takes him for a newbie, so he gives him tips, telling him to relax his strength and focus. Marin thanks him for the tips, but Dahlia brushes them off, telling him it's only natural to help out a fellow kin, as he takes his leave. Leaving the examination arena, Dahlia heads over to the guild reception, which is in the next room. When he gets there, the receptionist, who is also an elf, welcomes him warmly, commending him on his feats in beating the high score. But as expected, Dahlia brushes it off lightly. The receptionist then hands him an official document, recognizing him as an adventurer. When Dahlia receives the document, he gets shocked at the fact that he's being recognized as a D-rank adventurer despite his feat. But the receptionist tells him that it's simply a policy for every new adventurer to begin at D-rank. She then assures him that, given his skill, he'd be sure to climb the hierarchy in no time. Impatient, Dahlia requests available quests so he can begin his journey to the top, and the receptionist hands him 2 interlinked D-rank quests about hunting for gargoyles in a manor. As expected, he tries to accept them both, but the receptionist stands against it, as the quests are only limited to parties. Apparently the manor hasn't been cleared in a long time, and since adventurers have been ignoring it for a while, the number of monsters in it has multiplied like crazy. Given that Dahlia can only sign up for the quest with a party, he looks around the room for a suitable member, but only sees a bunch of washed-down losers. All of a sudden, the training test golem from the other room crashes through the wall and hits Dahlia, leaving everybody in disarray. While trying to get himself back together, Dahlia is shocked to discover that Maron was the one responsible for the situation. Still, he finds it strange as the test golem weighs as much as a full-grown bull. Immediately, he decides that he'll make a great teammate. Marin apologizes for the damage caused, but the receptionist tells him it's not a problem, as long as he pays for the damage. She then proceeds to sum up the amount of money the repairs will cost him. Our MC, being as broke as he is, reveals that he has no money, but the receptionist assures him that he can take his time to pay for it, as long as it doesn't take too much time. Without wasting any time, Dahlia approaches him and asks him to team up with him, as they're fellowkins after all. Surprised, Marin wonders why the elf from earlier has taken such a liking to him. He analyzes his stats and confirms that he's quite strong himself, making him more puzzled. Eventually, he agrees to team up, and they both agree to each complete one of the quests. Even the receptionist gets excited at the union, as she believes Maron's strength as a warrior would complement Dahlia's skills as an archer. While they introduce themselves and try to get familiar, the receptionist announces the party as she registers them. Dahlia is then taken by surprise when he hears the receptionist announce Maron as a human, as he had assumed him to be an elf all this time. Throughout the journey to the manor, Dahlia keeps talking down on Maron, making his hatred towards humans a lot clearer along the way. Marin had known there seemed to be some bad blood between elves and humans, but he didn't expect it to be this deep, as the receptionist hadn't exhibited any of the traits Dahlia was exhibiting. Still, he keeps his cool until they arrive. When they get there, Maron feels the dark aura coming from the manor, so he confirms it lives up to its name. Looking around, he sees a huge gargoyle on top of the manor, but he decides to ignore it, as that was not the mission he chose. He then notices a swarm of level 18 gremlins swarming around the castle. Gremlins are basically young gargoyles, which seem to be quite powerful as well. Dahlia talks down to Maron one more time, asking him to back off so he doesn't get in his way, but to his surprise, Marin walks past him without saying a word. Angered, he yells at Marin, asking him not to ignore him, and Marin simply replies that he's just doing as he's been asked. Dahlia calls him rude and blames it on the fact that lowly humans like him don't even have the time to learn about manners in their short lifespans. But Marin cuts in, stating that Dahlia has no right to call him short-lived, as he is over 100 years old. Hearing this, Dahlia goes pale, as he wonders if he just heard him correctly. Marin then tells him to quit with the hate comments and focus on his actual quest while he focuses on clearing his as well. With that said, he proceeds into the manor to take care of the gremlins, but Dahlia stops him once more, asking if he intends to go in alone. Marin replies that gremlins are only at level 18, and that at their levels, he doesn't expect them to prepare before confronting them. Hearing that, Dahlia realizes that Maron must have seen his stats. Since only strong individuals possess appraisal skills of that caliber, he wonders if Maron is stronger than him, but soon enough concludes that he must have used some underhanded skill instead. He then begins to insult him, calling him tacky and shameless for peeking at his stats without his permission. Unknown to him, a gremlin charges at him at full speed from a distance. While he rages on with his roasts, the gremlin gets close enough to rip his head off, but luckily for him, Maron steps in and kills it just in time. He admits that he did take a check out his stats, but states that it shouldn't be an excuse for him to drag him down. Dahlia takes offense to the statement as usual and begins to flare up again, but Maron simply leaves to complete his tasks, so he's left with no other choice than to do the same. After a short while, Maron takes down 50 gremlins as the mission required him to. Meanwhile, Dahlia struggles terribly on his end due to the thickness of the gargoyles' skins. Marin considers assisting him for a while, but then concludes that Dahlia should be man enough to make it out alive at the very least. He then decides to focus his attention on something else, turning one of the dead gremlins into a top-class meal. While unsure of what parts to eat, Maron remarks that since the creatures have a striking resemblance to frogs, they should probably be prepared in the same manner. He gathers the parts that look edible for skewers, but seeing how it barely amounts to anything, he decides to include their organs as well. After cleaning them up properly, he piles them up on a stick and proceeds to grill them carefully before tasting. When he tastes the meat, he likens its taste and tenderness to that of a chicken or a duck as it melts directly into his mouth. Suddenly, his body begins to go numb as he falls to the ground. He then realizes that he has been poisoned by the meat. Without any antidote, Maron wonders what quick steps he can take to save his life. It then suddenly dawns on him that gremlins don't use poison for their attacks, so if their bodies naturally contain poison, it only means they can neutralize it on their own. Immediately, he digs into another gremlin corpse and locates its liver, as it is most likely the organ responsible for the neutralization. He then decides to gamble his life on this piece of information he just discovered. After eating the gremlin's liver, Maron checks his status window and confirms that the poison has been successfully neutralized. Relieved, Maron sits upright and thanks his stars for surviving the ordeal. Realizing that people have more reasons to avoid eating monster meat other than its disgusting look, he suggests researching antidotes on the side. However, Dahlia interrupts his fun time and demands an explanation. Seeing Maron eating gremlin remains, Dahlia's opinion of humans sinks even lower, and he asks Maron how he consumes something so disgusting with a straight face. Maron recalls that elves are vegetarians and immediately tells him not to mock what aligns with other people's palates. Dahlia insists that it's not about understanding and respecting each other's tastes. He laments ending up at the same party with a human and witnessing the repulsive scene. The dramatic elf gasps in horror and wishes to return to the world tree at once. With teary eyes, Dahlia asks whether Maron has already completed his part of the quest by collecting the gremlin eyes and questions why he is still lingering in the area. Unwilling to go back on the quest's condition of working as a two-person party, Maron discusses the disadvantages of acting separately, which might later involve the receptionist, Daisy, who assigned them the quests. Dahlia still insists on taking the risk rather than receiving help from any human, but Maron has other plans. He decides to help Dahlia take down the gargoyles and quickly finish the quest. Before Dahlia can react, Maron hits his sword on a pot while claiming that he used to be a shield soldier. This loud noise activates his taunt skill, which draws the nearby monster's attention to him. Instantly, the skill's effect reaches the gremlins and gargoyles close by, but Dahlia stares at him in confusion, wondering what banging a pot has to do with being a shield soldier. Moments later, he sees loads of monsters rushing toward them, and his jaw drops in disbelief. Dahlia then realizes that Maron is using the most iconic aggro skill called Provoke. He immediately runs off, wondering why the insane human is using a skill meant to protect party members like that. On the other hand, Maron wonders why the skill is always that effective, but then throws the pot down and decides that it doesn't matter. Just then, he takes a stance and calls out his skills, swordsmanship, and martial arts. With that, the system triggers swordsmanship, which is a rank A skill that increases sword damage proportionally, and martial arts, which is a rank B skill that boosts his agility for close combat. The monsters lunge at Maron, but he is unfazed. After creating some distance, Dahlia decides to support Maron with his archery skills. To his astonishment, Maron effortlessly cuts down the horde of monsters surrounding him. Dahlia doesn't believe his eyes since he struggled against 5 gargoyles earlier, but Maron defeated them with ease. Later that day, Dahlia asks whether Maron is okay with sharing the credits with him since he basically took all the monsters down alone. Luckily for him, Maron agrees without hesitation because it's a party quest anyway and reminds him that he did it because Dahlia wanted to end the quest faster. Suddenly, Dahlia's ears twitch, and he hurriedly looks around asking Maron if he heard anything. While he traces the sound's source, Maron thinks about the way the elf's ears moved and finds it intriguing. Shortly after, Dahlia rushes off, leaving Maron confused. Dahlia soon arrives at the edge of a cliff and sees the carriage delayed by a deer accident. 2 men are discussing the delay, complaining because they are in a hurry to reach the black market the next day. Growing frustrated, one of them kicks an elven slave and orders him to deal with the situation quickly. But it pisses Dahlia off. The slave falls to the ground and begs the traders not to hit him, and Dahlia tells Maron that it's the reason he despises humans. After expressing his hatred for humans, he tells Maron to pick up his weapon and punish the slave traders with him, but Maron isn't interested in anything outside the quest. Maron suggests that the slave might be a legal one, bound by a debt or crime. Dahlia counters by reminding him that the men mentioned the black market, but Maron advises him to report to the city guards and begins to walk away. Hearing his answer, Dahlia's opinion of him drops even further, and he decides to handle the situation alone. As he leaves, Maron hears quiet sniffing sounds and stops. Inside the carriage is a female elf desperately trying to calm her crying child. While Dahlia debates whether to confront the slave traders alone, Maron's sword whistles past him and smashes into one of the carriage wheels, leaving the slave traders stranded. Surprised, Dahlia demands to know why he changed his mind after refusing to help earlier. Maron recalls the kindness he received from a nun during his childhood. He decides to ignore the politics going on between the adults and makes the child his priority because children are innocent. While the slave traders struggle to understand what just happened, their boss spots Dahlia and Maron and quickly points them out to his partners. One of the traders immediately demands to know who they are. But before he can finish speaking, Dahlia and Maron leap down the shallow cliff and land in front of them, ignoring his threats completely. Thereafter, Dahlia angrily rants about humans' arrogance and declares that he came to save his comrades. The trader's boss quickly responds by claiming that all the slaves in his possession are legal and claims that they are officially recognized slave traders under the Marquis Bechtal family. To back up his claim, he shows them the Bechtal family's crest engraved on his carriage. He then demands their apology and payment for the carriage's repairs. As he speaks, he insults Dahlia, calling him an ignorant troublemaker, which instantly pushes him to the brink. To everyone's surprise, Maron calmly steps in and reveals that the crest on the carriage is not the Bechtal family's crest. The slave trader's boss panics and explains the crest's features to convince them, but Maron soon points out the error in their fake crest. He explains that the wolf on the real Bechtal crest has one slashed eye, a trait that references the family's one-eyed ancestor. The crest on their carriage, however, shows a wolf with two normal eyes. This revelation drops the boss's jaws and the slave traders panic as Maron explains the punishment for impersonating nobility, which is the death penalty. Hoping to silence them, the boss orders his mercenaries to end the duo, and they swiftly spring into action. Unfazed by the incoming attack, Maron casually talks about how mercenaries avoided fighting their fellows in the past and wonders if it's different presently. He then sends the mercenary flying with a powerful punch in the gut. The mercenary crashes into the ground, instantly losing consciousness, and it shocks the slave traders. As the boss wonders how the huge mercenary got knocked out with one blow, an arrow whistles past his face, and he falls to the ground. Faced with the intense pressure coming from Dahlia and Maron, the boss immediately surrenders. Later that day, the freed elves thank Dahlia for saving them, and he joins up with Maron. He apologizes for keeping him waiting, but Maron asks if he is done with his affairs. Dahlia then goes on to explain the arrangements made for the elves and the slave traders who have been handed over to the city guards. The freed elven child gains Maron's attention and praises his cool moves earlier before thanking him. The parents also thank him as they leave, but the child's words leave a warm feeling in his chest. Not long after, Dahlia reluctantly thanks Maron for helping him save his kin. But Maron ignores the gratitude and bluntly asks him to pay him instead. Shocked by his response, Dahlia's attitude takes a 360-degree turn, and he asks if money was his goal all along. Maron refutes and claims money is more reliable than gratitude. Upon hearing this, Dahlia shivers furiously at the thought of being grateful to such a human. He angrily throws a pouch of coins at him and asks him to get lost. He then walks off fuming and reiterating that he will never trust a human again, but Maron doesn't care because he got the money. The next day, Maron returns to Hexalum Guild, where Daisy confirms the number of items he brought back and then congratulates him for completing his first request. She praises him for clearing the difficult quest perfectly, and he thanks her. Daisy then hands him the reward, and he wonders why it's small. Before he can complain, Daisy, who's oozing out an eerie aura, tells him about the guild's regulation, which is to automatically deduct his debts from his quest rewards until he's able to pay back the full amount. Maron replies that he will pay back soon, and decides to get another request before heading out. Maron walks up to the mission board and browses through the available requests hanging there, hoping to find one that'll get him to eat a different monster. He discovers a level 15 dungeon subjugation request, but skips it after seeing that it only involves stone monsters. Shortly after, he sees a level 26 orc hut subjugation request, and wonders what orc meat might taste like since he has never eaten it before. While he contemplates the possible taste of orc meat, Mickey sees him and comes over to meet him. She introduces him to her current party members, Olger, who's also an archer like herself, and Hecate, who's the party's mage. Mickey explains that the three of them have been in the same party for a long time. Maron observes the group and points out that their formation seems unbalanced. When he asks about their vanguard, Mickey explains that they usually hire one temporarily but have been unable to find anyone recently. Hecate suggests that this might be because magic has become easier to learn, reducing the number of available vanguards. With that, Mickey invites Maron to join her party as the vanguard for the Orc's Hut subjugation request. Inside the Orc's Hut dungeon, Mickey narrowly avoids a powerful club swing from a massive orc. At the same time, Olger fires an arrow that strikes the creature directly in the eye. The orc screams in pain, and Mickey quickly thanks Olger for the perfect support. Before the monster can recover, Hecate releases an explosion spell that lands squarely on its head, instantly bringing it down. Mickey celebrates her party's perfect sink and kill streak, but Hecate is just thankful her spell hit. Not long after, Hecate notices some strange sounds, and others soon feel the earth tremors. They then see a herd of orcs charging at them at full throttle and immediately retreat. During the chaos, Hecate stumbles and falls, and an orc almost turns her into minced meat, but Maron saves the day. He comes in swiftly and cuts down the herd of orcs in a split second, leaving his party members stunned. The others wonder how strong Maron is as he stands in the sea of orc remains. Later in the evening, the party works together to defeat another orc, bringing their total kill count to 10. Olger suggests they call it a day since they're all stressed out. As Mickey stretches her joints, she talks about Maron's scary strength, but Olger is more thankful that he saved Hecate earlier. Just then, Hecate discovers she hasn't thanked Maron because of her shock back then and turns to thank him, but he's nowhere to be found. The group wonders where he went, but Hecate picks up a scent and tells the others about it. Mickey wonders who's roasting meat in the middle of the dungeon. They soon stumble upon Maron roasting meat under a tree, and Mickey suggests adding some mushrooms to spice it up. However, she sees the remains of the orc he's grilling and panics. They ask what he's doing, but Maron is busy researching the perfect comparison to the meat's taste. He concludes it's a mix of beef and pork while savoring the juicy taste. Disgusted, Mickey asks him to stop eating the vile meat, and it irritates the party members. However, Maron ignores his surroundings and continues to contemplate how to spice up the taste with some more seasoning. Unable to understand the satisfaction in his expression, the party steps aside to discuss what they'd just witnessed. Seeing their reactions, Marin concludes he's done with the party and continues to make plans to take some orc meat back with him. While guessing that Marin is from a region that eats monsters due to food shortage, Olger pats his shoulder and reveals that the party is ready to accept his peculiar taste, but asks him not to do it openly. Their decision surprises him, but Olger explains that they are not willing to lose such a reliable vanguard because of his weird taste. Afterwards, Olger suggests they eat and sleep, while Hecate and Mickey offer Maron some biscuits and beef jerky, but he rejects them politely. The following day, the party continues the orc subjugation request, and they confront an orc together. Marin tanks its attacks as the vanguard while the others shoot arrows and spells from the rear. Later in the evening, Marin cooks more orc meat for dinner, which leaves Hecate nauseated. At bedtime, Marin moves away to sleep alone as usual, but it makes Mickey worried. She asks about it, but Marin claims it's more comfortable that way. Afterwards, Olger decides to take the first watch, and the others go to sleep. As the bonfire crackles softly, its calming sound takes Maron down memory lane, recalling former companions gathered around a similar fire. Suddenly, voices call out his name. He jolts awake and asks why everyone is up. In response, Hecate threatens him with a fully chanted spell. She explains that they appraised his status out of curiosity and discovered his kinslayer title. With the crystal in Mickey's hand, the status window partially shows some of Maron's stats, leaving some details locked. Seeing that he has been exposed, Marin reflects on the kinslayer title, which is given to a cold-blooded person who has taken down over 100 of their own race. In addition, this title also increases the person's attack power by 5% whenever he's up against someone in his own race. As Mickey shivers in horror, she says they can't overlook the fact that he has killed over 100 people. Seeing that he easily joined their guild, Olger guesses he doesn't have a criminal record, and they continue to press him for an explanation. Maron apologizes but doesn't say more, and Olger asks him to leave the party since he can't trust a murderer. To their surprise, Marin accepts, picks up his bag, and leaves. 100 years ago, in southern Tierson Forest, a group of goblins charged at a mercenary group, but they easily defeated the monsters. The leader praised the archer's skill, and the group chatted for a bit. She then turned to Marin, referring to him as Charlotte, and asked about the subjugation proofs organization he was working on. Marin confirmed it and asked that they move on. As they moved forward, they had some more chit-chat and soon wondered why there were fewer goblins there compared to the request's info. Marin guessed it was because they were at the dungeon's entrance but realized that he was being ignored. He wondered if they couldn't hear his voice and tried to reach out to them, but the party members suddenly turned their gaze toward him with an intense killing aura. As their blood-red eyes glared at him, they asked why he did that to them and survived alone. Suddenly, Maron jolts awake from the nightmare in his room and looks out the window. Moments later, he arrives at the guild building, but the other adventurers talk behind him, bringing up the rumors and some other made-up stories tailored to suit their palates. Seeing that people are blowing the rumors out of proportion, he decides to ignore them and meets Daisy. However, she informs him of his promotion to rank C and hands him the certificate. He notes that he hasn't taken the promotion exam, but Daisy tells him the exam was abolished some years back and explains how promotion works now. Apparently, a person's rank automatically increases when his ability is recognized. While thinking about the recent trends and changes, unlike the old days, Marin asks if he can take on rank C requests immediately, and she shows the available ones. With the increase in request options, Marin sees a level 30 Harpy's Nest request, which is to procure harpy feathers. However, the monster meat enthusiast thinks about how harpy meat will taste and compares its shape to chicken. Out of nowhere, Dahlia interrupts his supposed strategic planning and talks about the rumors flying around. While ignoring him, Marin accepts the harpy's request, and it pisses Dahlia off. He angrily tells Maron not to ignore him because they reached out to him out of kindness. Maron briefly wonders why he used we instead of I, but a female beastman suddenly interrupts them, asking Dahlia if he's the human he talked about. Dahlia then introduces her as the leader of the new party he joined, and the beastman introduces herself as Imitar, speaking with strange, cat-like mannerisms at the end of her sentences. While she bickers back and forth with Dahlia, Maron discreetly appraises her stats and sees the details of the level 59 beastman who's also a priest. He notices that her strength status is the highest, but her job class surprises him. Imitar notices his appraisal and openly confirms her class, even though she does not resemble a normal priest at all. Maron recalls that clerics are usually support roles focused on healing, and judging by Imitar's appearance, she seems far from holy. Thereafter, Dahlia narrates how he joined the party after searching for one with races other than humans. He stumbled upon the human-hating party that Imota advertised and decided to join. In addition, the party comprises only the two of them. Imitar and Dahlia then bring up Maron's kinslayer's rumor that has been trending, and Imitar considers it an impressive feat. She casually invites him to join her party, but he acts clueless, thereby receiving some insults from Dahlia. Imitar repeats the invitation, and after noticing his resistance, bluntly explains his current situation. With his reputation as a kinslayer now widespread, no one will want to form a party with him. Looking around, Maron soon understands what he means and decides to accompany them temporarily. Imitar cheerfully welcomes him on board and suggests testing out their skills and compatibility. Confused, Manor wonders what she's implying, and she points at the harpy dungeon request. Upon arrival at the dungeon, some harpies charge at them, and the trio decides to start with the small fries. Maron takes the vanguard position, but thinks about how flying monsters are a pain to deal with as a shielder. While he thinks of a way to reach them, some harpy corpses drop, and he immediately understands the importance of archers. Dahlia, who's feeling high and mighty as he shoots down the harpies, claims he won't let a human steal his prey this time. Not long after, Imitar suddenly tells Maron to ready his shield, and she swiftly uses him as a platform to jump. She leaps into the air and takes down the last harpy. Thereafter, she praises his reaction speed, and he realizes that fighting alongside comrades isn't all that bad. While Imitar comments on their sync and Dahlia suggests rest after some more cleanup, Marin notices a cute creature there and wonders what it is. Dahlia then lectures him about the living doll, which is presently a popular trend. Presumably, it's a pet golem animated by infusing it with mana. Dahlia claims that the one there is a limited edition which costs 2 gold coins. Afterwards, he praises the doll for pulling some feathers and playing with it, claiming that it can help with combat and cleanups if raised right. However, Imitar snitches that Dahlia just loves cute things and Marin keeps staring at it. Upon noticing his gaze, Dahlia quickly hides it and tells Marin that it's not edible. Imitar then cuts the chit-chat and they continue the request. Moments later, the duo picks the important materials from the harpy remains, and Imitar talks about how the mission has been going smoothly. She asks Dahlia why he didn't introduce Marin earlier, but he claims there were circumstances. Suddenly, Imitar picks up the scent of grilled chicken and discovers that she hasn't seen Marin for a while. Ignoring Dahlia's advice not to go, Imitar decided not to let him off easily for grilling meat behind her back. Meanwhile, on Marin's end, he seasons some nicely cut out harpy meat and places it in the pan. He watches and enjoys the whole process till the grilled harpy shoulder loin is ready. Seeing that it looks just like chicken, he decides to give it a taste and analyzes it carefully as he chews it. Unfortunately for him, his party members interrupt his fun time, and Dahlia asks if he's alright in the head. He apologizes for eating without them and invites them to join him, but the duo falls to their knees in lamentation for witnessing such blasphemous deeds. Marin tries to justify his actions, claiming that the harpies are completely different from humans, but the duo isn't buying into it. Soon after, the sweet scent and appearance of the meat begin to entice Imitar, but she holds herself back. At that moment, Marin notices her interest and offers her some, but she still rejects it dramatically. Imitar accuses him of testing her and asks why the monster smells so delicious. Marin then remembers what he is stewing and quickly goes to check the pot on fire. He opens the pot and unveils the stewed harpy feet, but Imitar claims there's hardly any meat on the feet. Maron, who just wants to have some chicken feet, takes a bite and narrates the exquisite taste, which is similar to a pudding's texture because of the way he cooked it. Upon seeing him eat the harpy's feet, Dahlia panics and reveals that it contains paralysis poison. Suddenly, it paralyzes Maron, and Dahlia asks Imitar to cast Dispel magic on him. However, Imitar confesses she doesn't know how because it was too much of a hassle to learn, but Dahlia claims it's a basic spell every priest learns. Due to the consistent bickering, a harpy arrives and Imitar blames Dahlia for raising his voice. Still, Imitar tells them not to panic and uses an inferno spell, which misses its target and toasts Dahlia's living doll instead. Dahlia laments and holds Imitar accountable, but she apologizes, revealing her low-skill proficiency. She promises to get Dahlia a new one, but Dahlia claims it's a limited edition and continues to rant about the grudge he'll hold for the next 100 years. Later that day, the trio returns to the guild hall to cash in their rewards while looking tired. Daisy confirms the important materials and asks them to dispose of the harpy meat. Afterwards, Dahlia talks about her mental exhaustion, but Imitar asks again if Dahlia really doesn't want her to procure another living doll to replace the former. Shortly after, Imitar notices the harpy's feet with Maron and questions him about it, but he's not ready to let it go to waste after dressing it. Rather than carrying it around like that, Imitar tells him about the storage feature in the system. Apparently, it's a different dimension created with spatial magic where users can store items. Just then, Marin remembers the storage and opens his own while wondering why he was doing something as stupid as carrying heavy loads in a backpack. He wonders when he forgot something that important and thinks about his mental state. However, Imitar calls his attention, and after talking about their team's chemistry, suggests forming an official party with them. After hearing the suggestion, Marin thinks about forming a party with human haters, but before he can reply, Imitar celebrates and runs off to register their official party, leaving the other two speechless. Thereafter, Dahlia accepts him as a teammate and he decides to join the party. Afterwards, Dahlia looks forward to working with him, and his words trigger the memories of Marin's former party from the past. Not long after, Imitar returns with the paperwork and shows them the name she picked. The other two read the disappointing name, Totally Chaotic Party, and Dahlia complains about it, but Imitar stands by her decision as the party leader. Dahlia then asks why she chose the name, and Imitar recalls hearing Marin say it in the Harpy Dungeon. Dahlia laments dramatically because of the absurd name that'll be attached to her achievements moving forward. On the other hand, Marin is fine with any name and decides to grill the leftover harpy meat in his room. Before he leaves, Imitar ropes him into joining them for their party celebration, where they spend the reward. That night, the trio sits at the pub to party, but Dahlia still hasn't come to terms with the party's name. Imitar tells her to forget about it since she already submitted the name, but they bicker back and forth about it. Meanwhile, Marin notices the tasty meal on their table and gives it a try, but it irritates him. Soon after, Imitar explains the party's main goal, which is to reach rank A as quickly as possible. Marin questions the reason behind such a goal, and Dahlia responds that everyone has their reason before narrating how promotion from rank B to A works. According to her, the content of the promotion exam is a complete mystery, and the promotion is an accomplishment only true guild-approved elites can reach. Imitar then speaks up and reveals her personal reason. She explains that her younger brothers are still enslaved and she plans to earn enough money to buy their freedom. Presumably, the slave master promised to sell their status to her without touching them for 3 years or selling them off before then. She then talks about how her entire family was enslaved during the revolution, but Marin is clueless about the event, which surprises both Imotar and Dahlia. Dahlia then explains the history to him. For centuries, humans enslaved other races, capturing them and selling them for profit. Elves were valued for their rarity and beauty, dwarves for their skills and strong work ethic, and beastkin were treated no differently from animals. Imotar goes on to explain how her family was captured and imprisoned. Their minds and bodies were broken because anyone who tried to escape met a gruesome end. When the other races could no longer endure the suffering, they allied to fight back against the humans, and it marked the beginning of the revolution. Since the humans had a lot to lose in the war, they agreed to the other races' demand to abolish slavery and signed the agreement. This pact made the trafficking of other races illegal and forced humans to accept the boundaries of the other races. Dahlia adds that the pact allowed the other races to leave hiding and live openly again, including becoming adventurers. Imotar confirms this and says she became an adventurer the moment she gained her freedom to earn money. After hearing everything, Marin admits that he was unaware of the pact and then asks Dahlia why he is aiming for rank A. Dahlia replies that he wants to become the elder of the forest he grew up in. In addition, her family has been taking on the role, but the responsibility is forced on the eldest child. However, his older sister doesn't want the role, so Dahlia agreed with the elders. To qualify for the elder's position, he has to gain loads of achievements. After sharing her reason, Dahlia thanks Maron for joining them and asks about his own goal. As he is about to answer, Maron recalls his late family from the orphanage, causing a sharp headache. The others wonder if it's a very difficult one to say, and Maron finally reveals that there's a dragon he wants to end. Surprised, they ask him what he's talking about, and Marin tells them that he wants to kill the dragon that attacked Adrama and burned down the village a long time ago. He tells them again that he wants to kill the dragon. But before that, there's something he must do once he sees the dragon. His teammates pause, and Maron at first thinks they believe he's joking, but they are actually impressed that he had bigger ambitions than them, contrary to his recent behavior. Imotar then jokingly asks Marin if he plans to eat the dragon. But then Dahlia tells Marin that he'll also need to rank up since participating in operations like dragon subjugation and getting information requires a high rank. Since they all have similar goals, the trio cheer in unison, vowing to do their best henceforth. The following day, at the inn, Marin plans to take a rest and prepare a hearty meal. While cooking, he notes that he has run out of cash from the few ingredients he bought, and it's all thanks to the inn's damages he has finally paid off. Marin starts by heating up the oil, before opening the storage profile and bringing out the meat he had kept there. He is surprised the meat looks fresh just like when he had stored it, so he calls the storage profile a perfect warehouse. Maron then mixes egg into a batter and adds breadcrumbs before mixing the meat evenly, then putting the pieces into the heated oil. It starts sizzling, and once it's brown, Marin turns it over a few times like a chef before draining the oil and transferring it to a plate. And with that, fried harpy thighs are complete, so he picks one up and tries a bite, and it turns out better than he had expected. He digs into it and savors the taste, noting that there's no way it could taste bad since he was the one who prepared it. Suddenly, he hears Dahlia barking outside the door, knocking continuously and demanding that Marin open the door. As soon as Marin gets it, he asks Marin why he's wearing a helmet to his room, but then lets that one slide and tells him he has something urgent to discuss. Maron tells him he was eating, but decides to hear Dahlia out. There, he informs Marin that a problem has arisen with Imotar. Since it's about his teammates, Marin lets Dahlia in and then asks what happened. But when Dahlia sees he has prepared a meal out of a monster, he gets mad, but cools himself down, remembering that Imotar comes first. So he takes his seat and then asks Marin to keep what he's about to say secret from Imotar. First, he asks Marin to lend her some money, and it pisses Marin off that he yells at Dahlia to scram, but then Dahlia tells him to listen to the end of the story. There, he tells Marin that it seems Imotar was received by her human master. Confused, Marin asks for more context, so Dahlia reminds him of how Imotar said she was saving money to buy her little brothers, and also the reason they are taking a break that day is that she went to see her siblings. The current situation on the ground is that the master has broken his promise and was planning to put up Imotar's siblings for auction. Dahlia snaps, declaring that the slave master must have intended from the very beginning to toy with Imotar by pretending to release them. After Imotar learned about his act, she begged him to release her siblings, but he said he would cancel it if she prepared the ransom for her little brothers by the auction in 5 days. Marin then asks how much Imotar says she would save in 3 years, and Dahlia tells him it's 10 gold per sibling. Since she has 2, that'll make 20 gold coins. Stunned, Maron does the math and notes that 1 brawn is about 10 yen in his previous life, and since a 100 brawn makes a silver coin and 100 silver coins make a gold coin. An ordinary adventurer needs 2 gold coins to live for a month, so 20 gold means about 2 million yen. He wonders where Imotar plans to get such a huge amount in 5 days. Dahlia continues with his narration, noting that he didn't want to spread the rumors, but Imotar begged him to save her little brothers. Marin realizes that's why Dahlia came to borrow money, and Dahlia admits that he can't ignore problems related to slavery since other minority races are also his kin's brethren. Dahlia asks him once more to lend him some money even if it's just a little, but Marin shocks him by refusing. He reminds Dahlia that it's only been a few days since he formed a party with them, and does he think he can trust them with such a large amount of money? In reality, Marin doesn't have that much money, but he still acts adamant towards Dahlia. He remembers that he is a money-driven person, so he tries to manipulate him by saying that Imitar's siblings are children who just started walking. Marin gets pissed immediately after seeing through Dahlia's ploy, but he tells him he's stating facts. Marin then asks what's in it for him if he lends him the money, and Dahlia offers to pay back double the money with interest. But Marin says they might just run off till he dies. After all, his lifespan is short. Dahlia feels countered, so he pauses a bit before asking Marin to lend him his ear. He then whispers if he has the wind attribute among his aptitude attributes, but he whispers back that he doesn't. He's then confused, wondering why they are whispering to each other. In their world, aptitude attributes, as long as one has the intelligence status, they can use all types of magic. Just as the name suggests, it indicates which element is suitable for one's needs. Magic related to one's aptitude attributes consumes less mana, but has increased power. They are mostly given at birth, and most people are born with one type of attribute. Once in a while, there are geniuses born with 2 or more aptitudes, and most of the wizards who made their mark in history fall into the category. Left with no choice, Dahlia tells Marin that if he helps him with the case, then he will grant him the spirit blessings, which is the wind attribute. Marin thinks about it and stays quiet, so Dahlia assumes that he wants more. But Marin tells him that it isn't something anyone can do, so he asks one more time if Dahlia can do such a thing, and he instantly swears on the name of the forest. And with that, Marin agrees, and they head out. Outside the inn, Dahlia asks Marin how he plans to acquire the money since 20 gold coins is no small sum, so Marin suggests they sell the byproducts obtained from poaching monsters in high-level dungeons on the black market. Dahlia immediately refuses and reminds him that it's forbidden to enter dungeons that don't match one's guild-assigned rank without permission. Marin then asks how they are supposed to come up with such a sum in a short period. But Dahlia insists that illegal activities are far too dangerous. The reason is that quests issued by the guild are assigned a rank corresponding to the adventurer, and accepting quests that don't match one's rank is strictly prohibited. If one gets caught breaking such rules and entering an unranked dungeon, they will be penalized by being asked to pay a huge fine and being temporarily banned from accepting quests. Marin realizes that it'll take too much time to get to high-level dungeons because they are usually far from the city. Just by traveling alone, one can spend close to 3 to 4 days. As he contemplates, he asks Dahlia how he plans to get the money, and he tells Miron that he once thought about asking for help from the families in Hyungnim, but he had already received an extended repayment period until Imotar's release, and since he had no means of repayment, he plans to use the little money he's gathered for his adventurer activities. Dahlia learns Miron doesn't have any savings and recalls they both became adventurers on the same day, so he asks Marin what valuables he has that can be sold for money. Marin opens his storage and checks through his items. There, he sees a pair of earrings and notes that it's the most valuable. With that, they disperse to gather as much money as they can in the meantime. Later that evening, Marin visits a shop that deals in selling monster bones to organs. There, he shows the shopkeeper the earrings, and at first glance, the man tells Marin that he should have gone to the jewelry store, but then he is stunned when he learns that the earring pair are fragments or the Pleiades, an item that can't be obtained any longer since the dungeon that yielded it disappeared. Curious, the man asks Marin where he got it from, and Marin tells him that an old comrade gave it to him. Days later, at the slave master's villa, Imotar stays on all fours and watches her slave master talk down on her, reminding her it's pointless to act violently. He informs her that the 3 years he granted her were nothing more than a whim. While the master behaves so domineeringly towards Imotar, she angrily maintains her composure, noting that she wants to instantly kill him and smash his irritating face. Suddenly, Dahlia calls for her, and when she looks back, Imotar sees not only Dahlia, but Marin right behind her. Embarrassed, she asks Dahlia why he brought Marin, and Dahlia explains that Marin helped him prepare the money. She gets mad, but Dahlia postpones their conversation, and Marin introduces them as Imotar's party members, announcing that they have prepared the requested amount of money, and they'll also pay Imotar's ransom themselves. As he offers the deal, Imotar hopes Marin won't act like other humans and use her situation as a weakness to bully her later. The man collects the purse and downplays their party, saying it should be impossible for them to possess such a large sum, unless they have brought him fake currency. He then brags about how he can't be easily fooled, but when he looks into the bag, he is shocked to see the real deal. Seeing the look on his face, Imotar asks him to release her siblings. The mischievous man agrees that the money is real, but then he voids the contract by stating that the deal was for her to earn the money by herself and not involve another party. Imotar tries to speak up, but Dahlia snaps and yells at the man to stop messing around. He reminds him that according to the slave's contract, if the slave's family cannot provide the ransom, they must be sold. He then asks if he's suggesting that a human will work before an elf. The man wonders if they are trying to delay and cheat, but then he asks his assistant to bring the documents. There, Imotar realizes that if Dahlia hadn't been around, then she would have been at the mercy of the slave master. The assistant then shows up with the documents and 2 little beast folk. Immediately they see Imotar, they rush to hug her, and she checks them to confirm they are unharmed. While they have their mini reunion, Marin observes the siblings and realizes that Dahlia was right about them being little kids. Marin sees how thin they are, and he gets pissed at the slave traders for starving the children. The slave master brings out the slave documents and tells them he will dispose of them. He rips it to shreds, believing it concludes their transaction, but Imotar burns the paper to shreds with her magic. The man announces the siblings' freedom, but tells Imotar that she's still his slave. He looks down on the party members believing they are broke, so he asks them to leave. He even offers to give them the former slave's chains as a memento, but Maron shocks everyone in the room by bringing out a bag of coins, saying he'll buy Imitar's freedom as well. Imitar refuses his help, saying that so long as her siblings are safe, she's okay. But Marin asks the slave master how much Imitar's freedom costs. She yells at him for ignoring her, but then the slave master tells Marin that Imitar has already been put up for auction, so he cannot sell her. He informs them that Imitar is already on the market list, so canceling her will be tough, so he advises them to head to the auction themselves to buy her. Imitar yells that she doesn't know anything about it. Dahlia also yells at the slave master to shut up because he didn't believe that excuse. The man laughs at them and tells them it's legitimate because as a master, he can sell and buy slaves however he wants, claiming it's an agreement found in the legal slave trading rights. Dahlia gets pissed at the man for pulling such a dirty trick, but Marin notes that although the slave master acted childishly, he used his head. He believes that the auction story was something that man cooked up on the spot because he doesn't want to sell Imitar. Marin believes that as long as Imitar belongs to the slave master, one can't stop him from refusing to sell or putting Imitar up for auction. Noting that the man wants to make Imitar suffer that badly, Marin agrees to join the auction to buy her. This stuns Imitar, but he tells her not to do anything rash and to wait because he has a plan. She asks him why he's going so far to help her, and it makes him remember back when he was in the nursery how his sister once told him that all kids need someone to look after them and adults to guide and protect them. She insisted that every child born into the world deserved protection, and it was the reason why the nursery was created. Presently, Marin replies that she's the only one who can protect the kids, and that's why saving them isn't the end. She shouldn't leave them alone. He encourages her to stay by their side and ensure they eat well. She agrees and then warns him not to screw up or else she won't forgive him. As Dahlia walks away, he notes that he's not thrilled, but believes Maron has a plan, so he'll follow through with it, and with that, he bids Imodar farewell. After they leave, the slave master laughs and notes that Imodar has some reliable friends. He then asks her if she thinks her friends can set her free. The man walks up to her and tells her that if he wanted to put Imodar in the auction and sell her that no matter how much she struggles, she can't escape from him, and in the end, she'll wind up back with him. As he walks off, she asks him what he's scheming, but he tells his assistant to contact the Merchant Guild's support squad and get ready. On the auction night, as people buy slaves, Dahlia and Maron sit as bidders. They learn that the average Beastman slave prices range between 8 and 9 gold, and if it reaches 10 gold, Dahlia offers to cover up. Right after the last human slave got auctioned off, the announcer calls on Imotar and introduces her as a gladiator slave who climbed to the Colosseum hero record. While he states all her abilities, Imotar notes that her master definitely pulled some dirty trick, and she wishes she could tell Dahlia about it. Her slave master sees Imotar and scoffs at her party members, saying they don't have much cash left after blowing a lot to buy Imotar's siblings. He doesn't plan to let them buy Imotar even if hell freezes over. And for that, he stationed a merchant who will bid for Imotar so high that the others would have no choice but to back down. The announcer starts the bidding session from 6 gold and 30 silver, but then the merchant, who quickly raises his hand, bids 20 gold. The high amount shocks the entire crowd, and the announcer happily continues the auction. At this point, Imotar falls into despair, while the announcer calls out if there's anyone bidding over the amount. Dahlia shudders in his boots as the amount the merchant had bid was completely out of his finances. But what he didn't expect happened next. Marin raises his number and asks the announcer what their maximum bid is. The man replies that it's 30 gold for humans and 50 gold for other races. Without wasting time, Marin announces that he'll bid 50 gold. Dahlia freaks out and asks him, thinking Marin only had 10 gold, but Marin reveals that he only suggested that amount, but never said that was all he had. After all, he never trusted the slave master. Upon hearing Maron's price, the announcer looks at him and wonders if he can pay such a huge amount, and he doesn't look reliable to pay in installments, so he looks down on Maron and tells him that the auction house only allows payments up front. Instantly, Maron walks to the podium, defying the announcer's warning. He looks at Imotar, who doesn't have a clue what he's thinking, and to everyone's surprise, Maron opens his storage window and dumps 50 gold coins on the podium. The slave master cannot believe his eyes as he wonders how Maron, a mere C-rank adventurer, was able to get such a huge fund. The announcer, on the other hand, looks at the coins and declares Imotar sold. Later that evening, Imotar returns to her siblings, and she cries while hugging them, noting that she's finally a true free folk. Dahlia, on the other hand, asks Maron why he didn't tell him he had such an amount of money in cash, but Marin replies that Dahlia never asked how much he had. With that out of the way, Dahlia doesn't press on, and he's happy the family is once again united. Imotar then calls Maron and thanks him for helping her and her siblings. While she wonders how she should repay him, her siblings smell a delicious meat aroma and immediately latch onto him to go grab some food. After the leave, Imotar asks Dahlia what she should do since she has no idea how to repay Maron, but Dahlia tells her not to think too much about it, and Marin probably likes them as comrades, so it's best if they stick together from that moment. She then asks Dahlia if there's something during lunch because Maron smells oily and tasty, but then Dahlia eventually processes what's going on, so he runs to Maron to stop him from feeding the siblings out of the meat made from monsters. As Marin tries to feed Imotar's younger brothers, Dahlia suddenly barges into his room and demands that he stop. Confused, Marin asks what the problem is, but before he can get an answer, Imotar's brothers happily munch on the deep-fried meat he offered to them. After the first bite, the boys praise the taste, but Dahlia asks what exactly he is feeding them. Imotar casually assumes it is fried chicken and says it should be fine since her brothers already have all their teeth. However, the realization suddenly hits her, and she asks what the fried meat is made of. Without hesitation, Marin tells her it is harpy meat, and Imitar asks why he is feeding them vile meat. She snatches the meat away from them, calling it dirty, but the boys protest loudly, insisting they want more of the delicious meat. As she argues with them, the aroma of the fried meat reaches Imitar's nose. She then decides to pretend to eat it and collapse dramatically to scare her brothers into stopping. Still, she cannot bring herself to willingly consume monster meat. After a brief internal struggle, she steels herself to take the fall for her siblings and plans to roll on the ground dramatically after biting into it, acting as if it's poisonous. After eating the harpy meat, Imitar freezes for a while, and Dahlia asks if it's really poisoned. Shivering in disbelief, Imitar wonders why it's so good, but her brother's nonstop pestering finally snaps her out of it. She thinks about the juicy taste and wonders if it's really harpy meat. When Marin asks her if it tastes good, she hurriedly lies and says it doesn't. She then scoops up her brothers and storms off, declaring that she will never forget the insult. Not long after, Marin tells Dahlia to start giving him 90% of the request income that goes to him until he's able to repay his 70 gold coins. Stupefied, Dahlia asks if Marin wants him to starve to death, but he doesn't care that much about it. Thereafter, he demands the reward Dahlia promised since the matter has been settled. Later at night, Dahlia leads Maran into the forest, and he asks if it's necessary to come at night. Dahlia explains that the village is too crowded and that spirits dislike such environments. Marin then asks how he is able to grant an attribute blessing, noting from his words that it is not something just anyone can do. Dahlia tells him to remove his thick gloves, explaining that part of his bare skin must be exposed for the blessing to permeate. After following the instructions, Dahlia briefs him about how elves born in the forest receive the blessing of a spirit. The blessing's attributes become their inner potential, and these spirits accompany them for life. He adds that he can ask a spirit to grant its blessing to others. Such encounters only happen once in a lifetime, which is why people often save them for spouses or close family members. Realizing how precious such a blessing is, Maron asks if he truly wants to use it on him. Dahlia replies that Marin is his benefactor, since he helped him fulfill a lifelong wish to save his comrades suffering at the hands of humans. Thereafter, Dahlia calls upon the wind spirit, Sylph, and a gentle breeze surrounds Maron. Unable to see the magical things with his bare eyes, Marin feels the gentle wind brushing against his skin instead. Shortly after, Dahlia briefs him about another vile reason why the humans purchased elves in the past. Apparently, the humans sought to steal the blessings from the elves, and the elves endured this humiliation to protect their pride. Dahlia adds that the elves' death rate increased after the pact was signed. Without wasting any time, Dahlia releases Sylph toward him, and it engulfs him, granting him another aptitude attribute. The newly added aptitude shocks Marin, but Dahlia quickly cuts off his thoughts and warns him not to misunderstand, claiming that he still has not forgiven him for being a filthy human. The next day, Marin joins his party members at the Hexalim Guild. Upon arrival, they inform him that they have found a babysitter for Imitar's brothers. Dahlia wonders aloud whether they can entrust the young boys to a human, but Imitar is pumped up to spend her first day as a free citizen. She then shows them the request she accepted, which is a level 20 Crystal Cave subjugation request. Dahlia isn't excited because the mission involves fighting mud dwarfs in muddy swamps, but Imitar considers it a safe rank C request. As they prepare for the dungeon, Marin studies the mud monster's traits while wondering what they might taste like. Noticing his expression, Dahlia guesses what Marin is thinking about. But Imitar asks them to move to the village's entrance, where the carriage she arranged is waiting. While walking through the streets, Dahlia asks Imitar if she researched all the other monsters in the cave. Imitar affirms and says she will explain everything once they are inside the carriage. She also mentions wanting to secure a place to live with her siblings, as they have been staying at an inn. Suddenly, an expensive carriage stops in front of them. Dahlia and Marin assume it's the carriage Imitar rented, but she refutes it. Surprisingly, Imitar's former slave master steps out of the carriage. The dude smirks and talks like he predicted their movement. Disturbed by his arrival, Maran says their transaction is complete and asks what he wants. The man then says he missed Imitar and has come to propose, hoping to retransact the slave, but the suggestion leaves Maran speechless. Dahlia gets mad at the slave master, yelling at him for trying to pull a dirty trick by requesting to purchase Imitar. However, the man silences Dahlia, calling him an outsider who should butt out of their conversation. He also tells Imitar, who glares daggers at him, to soften her gaze. After all, they've known each other for a long time. He then announces that the two guards with him are above level 80, so Imitar shouldn't act brash else she'll get what's coming. After cautioning them, the slave master continues his conversation with Maran, offering to pay 100 gold for Imitar, but Maran refuses. The man gets stunned, and he wonders if the amount was too small because on a normal note he feels Imitar isn't worth more than that. As he belittles the beastkin, Dahlia roars at him, but then he can't vent his anger because of the guards. Still, the slave master increases the price to 150 and 160 gold, but Maran remains adamant. Imitar then yells at the slow man to let him know that it doesn't matter the amount he bids, because Marin won't sell her. The man who thinks everything is business still insists and offers to buy her for 200 gold, believing that Maran won't say no to his offer. Marin then gives it a thought, and his party mates are surprised by it. But he then reveals that he's just joking, so he reminds the slave master that Imitar's slave documents were already gotten rid of back then in the auction house, so she is no longer a slave, and for that reason, Maran won't have any further transaction with him. He then warns the man that if he treats Imitar carelessly in the future, he won't let it slide. The slave master finally gets it, and he gets mad at the party, so he tells them that he tried to settle things peacefully with money, but there's no other way. Imotar, who is brimming with anger, can no longer stomach it, so she hits the slave master squarely in the face, sending him flying. Angrily, she declares that she's no longer his slave, so he shouldn't talk down to her. One of the guards gets pissed at her and reaches for his weapon, but Maron appears right behind him and warns him not to do that. The guard is shocked because he didn't realize when Maron left his initial position without him being able to sense him, and in one move, Maron slams the guard's face to the ground. The other guard gets excited to fight, so he readies his spear to battle, but Maron picks up a rock and throws it at him. Immediately it hits the man. It sends him flying, knocking him out in that instant. Bewildered, the slave master tries to process what just happened since a single member of the C-rank party just took down 2 level 80 guards. He then asks Maron for his level, and Maron tells him he's level 95. The other two are surprised that Maron's level is that high. Then Imotar grabs the slave master by the head and tells him she's not done with him. He tries to talk her out of it, but gets what's coming for him. After Imotar pummels him for a while, Dahlia tells her it's time to go, or else they'll miss the carriage. She walks away happily with Dahlia and warns the slave master not to show itself ever again. The man who just got dog-walked crawls and vows to make them pay. But then he sees Maron standing before him, and Maron reveals how it took him a while to find a party because of the rumors of him being a murderer. He coldly tells the slave master that it's easier for him to crush a merchant guild than to search for a new party, so the man shouldn't mess with the party he just found. With one kick, he crashes the man's carriage and he calls it a warning before walking off. When the Chaos Party arrives at the cave, they fight the mud monster, and Dahlia informs them that the mud monsters are weak to flames, so they should light them up. He immediately regrets the decision because Imotar, the useless beast woman who sucks at controlling her flame magic, goes all out and nearly burns her friends to char, pissing Dahlia off in the process. As they argue, Maron grabs some chunks of the mud monster and thinks about eating it. Imotar warns him that she can't save him if he collapses, but Maron observes the goo and notes that it doesn't smell at all. Because of that, he takes a bite, believing it won't taste like dirt. But Maron has never been so off the mark than this. He regrets the decision and learns that not all monsters are edible. He then chooses to go for the leftover fried harpy he had kept in his store window, but Imotar sheepishly thanks him for saving her family, and she vows to repay him. Maron refuses her offer and reminds her that she has to feed her siblings, and this makes Dahlia question how Maron raised such a huge amount, and he hopes he didn't involve himself in something dangerous like he had warned him about earlier. Once Imotar hears Dahlia, she is shocked, but Maron tells them that he sold a keepsake from a former comrade. This surprised Imotar even more, and as she hears Maron speak of how he had decided to sell it, she gets frustrated and asks him why. But Maron tells her it's fine because they are now his comrades, and if she wants to repay him, she should keep parting with him henceforth. She wonders if that's all, but once he reassures her and calls her their leader, Imotar gets fired up and promises to do her best as their leader. Right after, she asks Maron if he's known Dahlia for a long time, for Dahlia to grant him a blessing, but Dahlia tells her that it's not much different from how long he's known her. While snacking, he tells her that it was a payment for a contract, and this surprises Imotar since Dahlia willingly handed out a blessing to a human whose face he hadn't seen. As fickle as ever, Imotar asks Maron why he always wears a helmet, and he tells her that he has personal reasons. Seeing her come close to him while wriggling her fingers, Maron asks her what she's up to, but Imotar closes the distance and wants to pry the helmet open. Thankfully, Dahlia stops her, saying it's indecent to pry into things others don't want to show. Dahlia then reprimands Maron for hiding his identity a lot, saying that Maron should also try to open up a little. After all, if one is interested in him, shows they want to be friends. Maron pauses and thinks about it, but all of a sudden an attack from nowhere hits him, and the others turn around and spot a monstrous chameleon using its crystal tail, so they kill it immediately. Right after, they check on him to see if he's alright and even suggest checking his face after seeing him bleed from the helmet slit used to see, so they assume he got struck by a crystal shard in the eye. Maron checks his vision and sees he can see properly, so he notes that he was simply grazed by the attack, so he tells them he's fine, but they refuse to believe him and yell at him to take off the helmet so they can check and treat the injury. Peradventure, his eye is injured. Imotar tells him they'll head to the temple to have it treated immediately, but when Maron sees her hand come close, he recounts how people screamed at him, calling him a monster when they saw his real face, and rejected his help, so he yells at Imotar not to touch him. Shocked by his reaction, they ask him if he doesn't want to show his face that badly, but he covers his face, cowering and muttering that they shouldn't look. Concerned, Dahlia tries to talk him out of it so they can check his wounds, but Maron remains adamant, insisting that he was simply grazed and he's fine. They still look worried, but then he reminds them of his level and logically explains how a crystal shard of such a low-level creature can't inflict a fatal wound on him. With that, he gets up, announcing he's fine, and tells them to continue the subjugation. Left with no choice, the party members accept, and Imotar casts a healing spell on his face before telling Maron to inform them if his condition gets worse. With that, they apologize for trying to force his helmet off, and he also apologizes for yelling at them. Hours later, they return to Hexalem to report the completion of their mission, but then the receptionist notices the weird atmosphere among the Chaos Party members, so she asks them what's up, but they brush her off. Imotar worriedly asks to ensure Maron is fine, and after he affirms, Dahlia suggests they take a day off to keep an eye on Maron's condition. Just then, as they are about to head back to the inn, someone storms into the guild, announcing an emergency. She holds a report and tells everyone that a new dungeon has been confirmed in the forest region on the border between Adrama and the capital. It is an open-type dungeon called the Dryad's Garden. Everyone is surprised by the announcement, but as the Chaos Party members conclude that the other girl party members will handle it, Marin suggests they join the subjugation. Surprised, they ask him if he's sure he doesn't need to rest, and he assures them he's fine, then reveals that there is something he'd like to test out. Moments later, many parties from the guild arrive at the new dungeon, and the Chaos Party isn't exempted. There, a rumor spread amongst them about how the party that first found the dungeon got hospitalized by the dungeon's bosses. Marin, on the other hand, notes that dryads are plant-type monsters, so he wonders if they'll taste like vegetables or pickles. Imitar and Dahlia read him like a book, and they are worried about their party's reputation if Marin eats monsters in front of the others. As if trying to cheer Dahlia up, Marin promises to cook him veggies out of the monster since elves are vegetarians, but Dahlia would rather pass. While the rumors about the monsters spread, someone shows up, confirming that there are 2 bosses. He introduces himself as Ankerman, the first hero, and assures them that everything will be fine. There, Marin finds the hero title odd, and it surprises Dahlia how outdated Marin is. So Dahlia informs him that heroes are people who hold the brave candidate title, and it's out of respect that people drop the candidate word attached to the title and call them heroes. Some people are anxious about the heroes because the very existence of heroes foreshadows the return of the Demon King. And when that time comes, the heroes will stand against the Demon King, and this is why the people respect them so much. Marin uses his appraisal skill on Ankerman, and he sees a lot of high stats, then lots of Labyrinth First Conqueror titles. Marin then informs Dahlia that he had once seen a hero, and Dahlia admits that there is more than one of them. He then informs Marin that of all the 5 heroes they've found so far, the 2nd hero was killed, and the 4th hero died to monsters, meaning there are only 3 left. After some time, the parties begin their raid on the dungeon, and they are welcomed by lots of wasp monsters. There, the Chaos Party fights off the creatures and easily kills them. This impresses other parties, and Imitar has a smug look on her face, but Dahlia reminds her that they have work to do, which is protecting the main force who plan to kill the dryads. A B-rank party tries its best to stall one of the dryads from interfering while they wait for Ankerman to finish the other. The monster attacks the hero, but he evades the vines and then unleashes a barrage of cuts that chop off the dryad into wood. Everyone who witnessed the attack praises Ankerman for going solo against the dryad, believing they are left with one more to handle. But just then, the dryad, still standing, mourns its dead comrade and lets out a shriek. The other adventurers do not pay it any heed, believing that Ankerman will butcher it too. But they are horrified when the dryad attacks them with a lot of vines and emanates an aura so powerful that Marin realizes that they are in a dungeon where they were supposed to kill the 2 bosses at the same time. Marin uses appraisal, and he confirms that the enraged dryad has leveled up. He immediately warns Dahlia about the monster, and Ankerman informs the other parties about it. He warns them to fall back, stating that their levels are too low to face the boss, so he'll buy them time. As they run for their lives, some of them get caught by the vines and they all panic, leaving Ankerman to fight the dryad all alone. Meanwhile, the hero calls the subjugation team fools for following him blindly, without prior knowledge of the bosses, unlike him who had obtained information from the Thieves Guild beforehand. He had revealed some of the information about the monsters to the team to cause commotion, and eventually defeated the bosses by himself to get another title in the bag. As he prepares to fight the dryad, he is suddenly notified that he cannot use skills or weapon techniques for 10 minutes, meaning that he has been cursed by the monster. Just then, it latches its vine and yanks Ankerman off his feet before slamming him to the ground. Adamant, the hero tries to cut the vine latched to his feet, but the dryad swings and smacks him over and over, till he nearly passes out. Seeing this, the subjugation party quickly dashes for their lives, while noting that the subjugation has failed. Marin, on the other hand, notes that if they stayed, the casualties would increase, so he dashes straight at the monster and activates the martial arts swordsmanship skill, but then he doesn't know what output to use against the Drya, so he decides to make it moderate. As the monster claws down on a human, Marin pushes him aside and then unleashes a slash so fierce that it not only cuts the dryad cleanly in 2, but also the nearby trees. The saved fella is stunned when he sees Marin one-shotting the level 70 monster. The attack surprised not just the onlookers but also Marin, who had intended to keep it moderate. Seconds later, he is granted the title of the Conqueror of Dryad's Garden. While Marin doesn't know how to react since it's his first clear title he's had, compared to the hero, his teammates run to him and praise him for easily handling the dryad using a flashy move. As he humbly tells them that he didn't plan on making it grand, the man he rescued earlier shows up and thanks Marin, and he's surprised by Marin's strength, which isn't justified by his party's rank. The others praise the party for defeating the wasps, making the subjugation easier, and also praise Marin for defeating the dryad. Ankerman couldn't. A few seconds later, they start muttering about Marin's Kinslayer title and how it isn't safe to hang around him. Dahlia and Imotar are disgusted, so they talk some sense into the insensitive humans before sending them off. On the other side, a party worriedly checks on the hero, who looks displeased while trying to figure out how Marin defeated the dryad so easily. Ankerman notes that he couldn't see Marin's level when he appraised him, and he's pissed at Marin, a mere C-rank adventurer, for stealing his dungeon first clear title, so he vows not to forget the incident. Later at the inn, Marin peels open some chestnuts he harvested from the dryad, and he calls them high quality. So he peels off the outer shell and boils the chestnuts before adding them to a syrup made from heated sugar and coating the chestnuts evenly with the syrup. He closes the lid, lets it cook for a while, and by the time it's ready, Maron names the food after his alias. He then observes it before giving it a try, and he's completely taken aback by the flavor that he notes that there's no way he can eat something so good by himself. So later that night, he calls Dahlia to his room and offers him the chestnuts, since Dahlia is a vegetarian. But Dahlia is frustrated since Maron doesn't get the reason why he's been rejecting the food. Curious, he asks about Imotar, and Marin tells him that he couldn't give Imotar because she doesn't like sweets. Also, her brothers are asleep since it's midnight. Left with no choice, Dahlia picks up a cooked chestnut out of pity for Marin's efforts only for him to try it out and discover how exquisite it tastes. Marin then asks him how it tastes, but Dahlia turns back at him, refusing to admit its lovely taste. Afterwards, Dahlia notes that the food captures the taste of autumn, and he learns that Marin has named it after him. Surprised, Dahlia wonders why Marin had named the food after himself. But Marin tells him it's the other way around, and says Dahlia has a sweet tooth. Dahlia doesn't argue and instead reveals that his mentor taught him how to control his appetite. And back in his forest, he couldn't eat much of the wild strawberries, which were the only sweet thing they had. There, Marin learns about how strict Dahlia's mentor is, and once Dahlia mentions her name, Rose, Marin grabs his hand and perfectly describes Rose. This surprises Dahlia as he wonders how Marin knows her. But rather than answering his questions, Marin asks Dahlia to take him to his home forest the following day. The next day, Marin arrives at the Great Asura forest, located at the center of the continent. He notes that a long time ago, his mage party member had an elf best friend, and he once took a quest with her. Marin noted that the elf stood out to him because she used a spear which was unusual for her kind, but he never imagined she was Dahlia's mentor. As he walks towards the elf's borders, Marin, who had confirmed multiple times with Dahlia earlier, wonders if Rose won't remember him. When he gets to the borders, he spots Rose, who instantly analyzes his build, and it matches what Dahlia had told her earlier. So she tells Maron to give her his name. At first, Marin uses his alias, but then calls himself Charlotte, and he says long time no see. Rose smiles before laughing and saying she hasn't heard the name in ages. Then she asks him how he has been and how many years it been since they last saw each other. Relieved, Maron is glad that she still remembers. But to his surprise, she walks closer and points the spear at his neck, demanding who he is and asking why he is trying to trick her by pretending to be her old acquaintance. She admits that there was someone by the name Charlotte, but it was 100 years ago, which means there's no way such a human would still be alive. Unconvinced, Rose asks him to prove himself by telling her the nickname she used to call Charlotte. Marin pauses and recalls his first time partnering with Carlos. Back then, Carlos had witnessed his strength, and he wanted Marin to be a part of his party. But Marin had initially refused, but Carlos then convinced him through Rose that he'd get to meet other races. Interested, Marin stayed behind, and Carlos introduced Marin to Rose, and Marin shook hands with her. She considered his name long, so she chose to call him Char. Presently, Marin tells her the nickname, and she realizes that it's him in the flesh. She sizes him up and notes that he doesn't look old, contrary to most humans. But he clears her doubt away by reminding her of how Carlos hated her baked Madeleine and the stockpiled fan letters she'd often get from mercenaries. After confirming that Maron is the same person she remembers, she accepts and tells him to follow her because there's something she wants to confirm. When he gets to her cabin, she offers him some tea and apologizes, saying the place is just meant for her to use to sleep. There, Marin learns that she lives alone in the shack since it's easier for her to guard the forest entrance from there. After observing Rose, Marin notes that she hasn't changed at all after 100 years, and it's a common thing for elves. After Rose gets a no from Marin regarding taking off his helmet, she asks him to show her his hands, so he takes the gloves off, and she examines them, noting that he hasn't aged a bit. She tells him that it feels as if time has stopped for him compared to her. Curious, she asks him if Carlos hasn't aged just like him. But Marin quivers before informing her that Carlos and everyone else in their party are dead, and he's the only one left. Rose reasons logically and agrees with him, but then she reveals that she thought all of the party members had died. Back then, the only news she got about the party was from the occasional letters Carlos used to send her, but then he stopped sending replies, so she decided to wait, while assuming that Carlos was busy, until she heard that their party, Romantia, disappeared as they had evaporated 20 years later. Even though parties did go missing back then, it was very strange for Romantia since they were very strong, so rumors spread. At first, Rose didn't believe it and decided to wait it out, but too much time passed for her to keep holding on to hope, which was why she had concluded that they were all gone. Now, Rose is more shocked than happy to see him alive, so she curiously asks him how he lived for 100 years without aging at all. Marin then reminds her of the last time they had formed a party together, how they had killed Regina Aranea, the Spider Queen, and obtained the skill book known as Arachnophobia. Rose positively replies and recounts that she was the only one back then with appraisal magic, so she appraised the book for him. Marin then tells her that the reason he's still alive and the reason his comrades are dead is because of the book. Giving an account of the events that transpired, Maron explains how his party had been on a mission to hunt goblins in a certain forest. Unfortunately, they were met with tons of other powerful monsters which naturally shouldn't have been in the area. Still, they stuck to their formations, and with Maron being the shield, they were able to subjugate the creatures without any casualties. After defeating the monsters, the team gathered and began to plan their next course of action. Because the goblins they encountered didn't in any way match the descriptions they were given by the client who hired them, they decided that they would demand extra payment. Not wanting to go further into the dangerous forest, the team decided that the best course of action would be to retreat, taking some of the monsters' corpses as proof of what they experienced. But before they could take any action, they sensed the presence of a mysterious being, which suddenly appeared behind them. They could immediately tell that something seemed off, so they got into formation, asking the being to identify itself. The being expressed its disappointment about how they had destroyed the monsters it had taken its precious time to create. It then revealed itself properly, and to their surprise, they were astonished to see a scaled creature that was neither human nor a different known race. Terrified, Marin had tried to use his appraisal skill to check its stat, but things didn't end well for him. He was only able to confirm for a fact that the creature wasn't human, but in that same moment, he was sent crashing into a tree. The being didn't like the fact that a mere human dared peek at its stats, so it decided to get physical. At that very moment, the rest of the team knew what was coming, so they got ready for battle. The party healer immediately started treating Maron, who was already half dead at the moment. The being then introduced itself as the Gold Dragon, the strongest and wisest, even among dragons. Hearing about its identity, the team already knew they wouldn't stand a chance, even if Marin wasn't injured, so they thought up a swift escape plan. Before they could actualize it, the Gold Dragon, which had already anticipated all their moves, started dropping them one by one. Hesitant to give up, the party leader tried to buy time for the healer to cast a wide area healing magic on her comrades by asking what the dragon wanted. The dragon then began to yap about how it had fallen deeply in love with the Demon King, and therefore had devoted its entire life to resurrecting him. Thanks to the dragon's yapping, Demian was able to ready the spell, and the entire party planned to escape as soon as the mass healing took place. But little did they know that the dragon caught on. Just before the spell got activated, it interfered, killing the healer in an instant. Enraged, the leader charged at it with her full force to retaliate, but ended up beaten down. Now barely conscious, Maron realized that the only way to buy time for his injured teammates to make it out would be to use the arachnophobia skill from the spellbook. He then immediately activated the spellbook. But the next thing he realized was that he was stuck in a monstrous form with no dragon in sight. Worst yet, he was standing over the dead bodies of countless humans, including the current 4th Brave. Standing there in shock, he got a notification from the system, telling him he had acquired the title Kinslayer. He then understood what had transpired. When he used the skill, he had transformed into a powerful spider monster and lost himself in the process, causing him to kill countless humans, including the comrades he tried to save. He was only able to regain consciousness because he came in contact with a status-cleansing purification stone that the 4th Brave had on. By the time he came back to his senses, roughly 100 years had already gone by. Marin breaks down completely while he narrates the events to Rose, but she assures him that it wasn't his fault and that he was simply trying to protect his teammates. Still, he apologizes for what he did, especially for murdering her best friend. He then explains that the reason he never takes his helmet off is that for the past 100 years, everyone who saw his face had totally freaked out, calling him a monster. He shares that he remembers canceling the skill, but still doesn't have the boldness to reveal his face to anyone, including himself. Rose answers, asking if he had ever told his comrades about it, but he answers that he can't bring himself to do so, as he believes it could be the end of their relationship. Still, she insists that he should show his face to them even before he shows it to himself, as what he's afraid of is not his face, but how people would react to it. She tells him she believes that if his teammates are able to accept him, no matter how he looks, then he'll be able to face his own appearance. Hearing her words, Maron still feels hesitant, as he doesn't know if he trusts them enough yet, but Rose assures him that it's okay. She asks why he changed his name from Charlotte, and Maron reveals the baked chestnuts, which he supposedly named himself after. He then explains that he changed his name because he was afraid his real name could be on a wanted poster. When she asks what he has been doing since he woke up, Maron tells her about how he decided to become an adventurer, as mercenary bands no longer exist. He then narrates his whole experience up until how he got to team up with Dahlia and Imitar. Impressed, Rose asks how Dahlia is doing and if he has gotten any better with the bow, and Marin assures her of the man her pupil has become. He then remarks about how her uptight personality has softened over the years, causing her to react awkwardly. With that being said, they say their goodbyes as Marin leaves. On his way back, Marin ponders Rose's words, as he wonders if he'll ever trust his teammates enough to reveal his face to them. When he arrives, he meets Imitar in a terrible mood as she rants about how Anchorman has been messing with her ever since he left. He offers them some chestnuts he had brought along, but they both turn them down, as they know where he got them. Imitar then begins her narration, rambling about how the hero had snatched all the quests she had tried to pick from the guild board, almost like he was trying to spite her on purpose. She narrates further that he had also gone around spreading false rumors about her violating guild rules, and that when she confronted him about it, he simply brushed it off as a mistake. Dahlia then adds that instead of returning to the capital where he works, the petty hero had followed them out here, trying to pick silly fights with them. Meanwhile, while they discuss, Imitar's brothers get drawn by the scent of the chestnuts, so they steal some and start eating them. When Imitar finds out, she tries to stop them, but they resist, claiming that they've never tasted something so divine. Marin suddenly brings up talk about the second Brave, who was rumored to have been murdered, asking if there's a chance that it was done by Anchorman. But Dahlia replies that although Anchorman is petty, he doesn't seem like someone bold enough to do something like that. Besides, if he had that kind of power, he wouldn't have messed up that badly in the dungeon. He then makes mention of a particular underground rumor spreading about the hero's death. According to the rumor, the person responsible for the death of the second brave is none other than the third. Hearing about the fact that the second brave was most likely killed by the third, Maron gets completely shocked, as he never believed a brave could be capable of such an atrocity. Dahlia further states that although it's only a rumor, there's a reason it's raising people's suspicions. According to him, on the day the second brave died, there was a huge thunderclap in the capital, which was quite strange because it was a clear day. Given the situation, the people were led to believe that the thunder was caused artificially, and the third brave happened to be a well-known master of lightning magic. He had been known as the kind of lunatic to electrocute anyone who slightly ticked him off, and for that reason, people kept their distance from him. Even though they have a speculation about the death of the second brave, no one dared confront him or even talk about what happened openly because of the fear of what he could do to them. The royal capital had then announced that the second brave simply died in battle while trying to defend the nobles from assassins. Emotar remarks that for some weird reason, all the braves seem to have a couple of screws loose in their heads. She mentions how she intends to beat up Anchorman if he messes with her again. But Dahlia warns her against it, stating that it could attract serious punishment for her. Thinking about the number of first dungeon clear titles Anchorman possesses, Maron finally works his head around it and realizes the cause of the beef. Since one of the conditions for becoming a brave is possessing a first dungeon clear title, he realizes that the brave must not like the idea of him acquiring one. Together, the party concludes that he probably sees Maron as a threat, so he has decided to mess with his party simply to provoke him. While they discuss, Imitar catches her brothers trying to have some of the chestnuts, so she scolds them while dragging them away. Meanwhile, Marin wonders about Rose's words, wondering if his party members would still treat him the same when he finally revealed his face to them. The following day, the party heads into a dungeon where they are accompanied by a horde of mutant slimes, which prove to be quite sturdy. While the team works together to take them down, Maron gets lost in thoughts about some theories. He believes the mutation of the slimes could somehow be a precursor to the Demon King's revival, which could be really dangerous because they might encounter the Golden Dragon once again. Realizing what fate could befall them, he immediately starts to panic because Imitar and Dahlia are still pretty much weaker than his teammates from back then. Little did he know a slime was already charging at him to attack. Just before the attack lands, Dahlia pushes him away, taking the damage instead. Imitar then uses her explosive fire attack to finish off the rest of the creatures. At that moment, Marin snaps out of it and realizes the amount of damage he's done. Immediately, he scolds Dahlia for taking such a reckless action, but Dahlia tries to brush it off by acting nonchalant. Thankfully, Imitar can heal him up, but Maron still feels shaken by the act. He points out that as the shield, he's the one who should be tanking the enemy's attacks, and not the other way around. Dahlia then cuts in, stating that there's no way he would stand by and watch his teammate get hurt, even though he's just a lowly human with a short lifespan. Moved, Marin quietly apologizes for causing him to get hurt, while promising to be more focused in their future raids. On their way back, Emotar and Dahlia secretly discuss how much Maron has changed ever since he met Rose. Emotar considers asking about it, but a more pressing issue suddenly appears. Dahlia picks up the sound of a monster attacking a group of people nearby, so they immediately head there. At the scene, a powerful shadow monster attacks a few guards, who desperately try to stop it from getting to a nearby carriage. When it gains the upper hand and tries to kill the guards, Emotar and Dahlia arrive to stop it, but it still proves difficult to defeat, so Marin is forced to intervene and end it effortlessly. While the trio each question why they decided to save a bunch of random humans, a dwarf emerges from the carriage, thanking them for saving them. Shortly after, a young dwarf lady emerges as well, asking if they were the ones who saved them. Seeing her, Imitar and Dahlia immediately kneel before her, leaving Maron puzzled. When he asks who she is, the lady introduces herself as Tatacha, the daughter of the Dwarf Kingdom, as well as Oyura Gnome, the Golden Master. Returning to Hexalim, Marin and Dahlia are made to wait outside while Imitar reports the situation officially to the guild. While waiting, Dahlia reveals that the reason he and Imitar had rushed over to save them was that they sensed the presence of dwarves, helping Marin realize that their hatred for humans hasn't gotten any better. Marin points out that Tatacha simply looks like a child to him, prompting Dahlia to lash out at him severely. Dahlia explains that despite her young looks, she's a full-grown dwarf adult, who is both a wife and a mother already. Tatacha's dwarf escort thanks them for saving them, stating that things could have gotten really ugly if anything had happened to the princess. Shortly after, Tatacha gets discharged. On her way out, she makes Dahlia and Marin state their names. She then assures them that she'll never forget the names of her benefactors. Before she leaves, she casually states that something small and red will suit them, leaving them puzzled. After she leaves, they're still made to wait for a long while before Emotar gets released, making them wonder if there is a problem. While waiting, Marin gets hungry, so he whips out a ready-made salad he had prepared from his storage. Seeing the salad, Dahlia remarks that this is his first time seeing Marin eat only vegetables. Marin offers him some, but he proves stubborn. But his stubbornness only lasts for a while, given how neatly prepared the dish is. After confirming that the vegetables are real vegetables and not skin from some monster, he decides to try it. The moment Dahlia tastes it, he feels joy erupt from inside as he has never tasted any dish that divine since he left the forest. While making inquiries about the ingredients, Marin reveals that although the vegetables are real, he had added extra ingredients like slime and body parts from a few other monsters he had defeated earlier. Hearing this, Dahlia goes into a rage and starts blaming him for making him eat a monster again. In that moment, Imotar walks out, looking as drained as someone who has just seen a ghost. When they ask about it, she reveals that she was required to make a lot of statements and fill out countless documents regarding what happened. She also shares excitedly that she has been promoted to B rank by the guild. Although she's now a B rank, the party is still recognized as a C rank party because of the other two members, so they see it as an avenue to level up as well. When Imotar heads back to the guild to collect her certificate, Marin asks Hellion, the vice guild master, if he has any information regarding the gold dragon. But since Hellion had been born back then, he feels it'll be improper for him to tell the story. He then directs him to Daisy, the guild receptionist, who is the oldest member of the guild. Hellion finds it strange that someone as strong as Marin just suddenly appeared and started searching for the gold dragon, so he believes it'd be best if he keeps him under surveillance. When Marin asks Daisy about the dragon, she checks the record, and then proceeds to reveal the most shocking news ever. Marin is beyond astonished to learn that the monster he has devoted his entire life to defeating has already been taken down by a bunch of adventurers years ago. Upon hearing that the dragon has already been slain, Marin stands in disbelief, wondering if he still has any purpose to live. Daisy then shortly reveals that although the records claim that the dragon was defeated by the adventurers, that wasn't the case. She shares that during the subjugation, some of the adventurers used a very powerful fire magic which swallowed the city, but when it cleared, there were no traces of the dragon anymore. They were surprised that a dragon of such caliber could vanish without a trace, but since there were no attacks or sightings of the dragon after the subjugation, they decided to record it as a victory. Hearing this, Marin remarks that no human magic is capable of burning a dragon's corpse to nothing, so he concludes that the dragon is definitely alive somewhere. He asks if there's anywhere else he can get more detailed information, and Daisy tells him about a guild known as the Thieves Guild, which she believes would be able to look into it for him. According to her, the only place he can find the Thieves Guild would be in a faraway western wasteland, known to house traveling adventures. But since the western region has higher average monster levels, the guild has placed a restriction, stating that an adventurer has to be at least a B rank to be allowed there. The information provides Maron all the motivation he needs to get promoted, as he really needs to gather as much intel as he can on the gold dragon. The party then spends the next couple of days taking as many quests as possible, catching the attention of the other adventurers in the process. As a result, rumors begin to spread about not only their feats, but also about Maron's monster-eating habits. When they return from a quest one day, Imotar and Dahlia bond over the trauma Marin caused them by trying to consume 15 different types of slimes. After their quest completion gets verified at the guild, Maron and Dahlia finally get promoted to B rank, raising the rank of the party as well. While getting the documents finalized, Imotar randomly brings up talk about a festival taking place soon, so they decide to attend it as a means to blow off steam from their marathon. A few moments later, Anchorman shows up, putting the party on edge. When they ask why he came, he replies that he simply stopped by to commend their hard work. He then goes on to rub the fact that he's an A rank in their faces, while telling them to strive more to be like him. Marin doesn't seem interested in having anything to do with him, so he tries to walk away, only to get interrupted once more. This time, Anchorman publicly asks why he still hasn't shown anyone his face, catching the attention of nearby adventurers. He states that as a B rank, he's now a part of the guild's main forces, which would require him to reveal his face as a symbol of trust. Imotar and Dahlia try to defend Maron, but it only makes Anchorman press further. A staff member from the guild then agrees with bothering First Brave's point, stating that even if Maron doesn't want to reveal his face to the public, it is required for him to reveal it to the guild staff. Surprisingly, Anchorman doesn't stop there. Instead, he accuses the guild of trying to conceal the identity of a dangerous person with the Kinslayer title. At that moment, the nearby adventurers then begin to gossip about the fact that Maron not revealing his face makes him way more terrifying, agitating him in the process. Imotar and Dahlia keep trying to defend him, but it only makes matters worse. Maron then realizes that he has no other choice but to take off his helmet. He immediately starts sweating profusely as he tries to take it off for the first time. Carrying the trauma and resistance from his memories, Marin struggles to take off the helmet, but his hands feel heavier than ever. While he sweats profusely, Anchorman teases him about his inability to reveal his face even after attracting this much attention. He then threatens to formally request an investigation from the guild into why and how Maron obtained the Kinslayer title. In that moment, Marin dashes out of the building, making him appear even more suspicious to the rest of the adventurers. Immediately after he leaves, Imotar confronts Anchorman, who continues to yap about how he believes Maron to be a criminal. She threatens to uproot his head from his spine if he doesn't shut up, and as expected, the petty hero doesn't listen. Annoyed, she tries to attack, but is immediately warned by Dahlia, who tells her she'd be committing a crime and jeopardizing the party's adventurer status if she lays hands on a brave. They then leave the building with their heads bowed down. Meanwhile, while Maron tries to gain as much distance as he can from civilization, he wonders why he chose to run away pathetically, thinking about the implications it'll cause for his teammates. When he finally gets far enough, he takes off his entire armor for the first time and changes into some normal clothes. He then tries to feel his face, but panics, and concludes that he still has the same monster appearance. Without hesitation, he puts on his armor again. Seeing how the guild has made it a requirement for him to reveal his face before he can become a certified B rank, Marin feels like he's at a dead end. He doesn't want to be the one holding his team back, but he believes that the moment he reveals his face, he will be labeled as a freak, causing his teammates to start treating him differently. He then decides that the best bet would be for him to leave, so he doesn't hold them back. When he tries to leave, Dahlia catches up to him and convinces him to join them for a discussion. During the discussion, Dahlia and Imitar reveal that they don't blame him for running, but at the same time, they would appreciate it if he just addressed the elephant in the room rather than avoiding it all the time. When they ask him why he's always hiding his face, Maron then finally tells them about the accident that transformed him into a monster and caused him to kill humans. He reveals that the transformation must have deformed his face permanently because from his fragmented memory, everyone who saw his face, even after the transformation, kind of freaked out. He then tells them his plans to leave, as he wouldn't want to be a burden on their party as a result. Hearing his words, Imotar and Dahlia snap as they begin to lash out about how insensitive he was to have said something like that. They reveal that despite their undying hatred for humans, they agreed to be in a party with him, and yet he still believes that they would ditch him because he looks a bit more chopped than other humans. They then assure him that no matter how cooked his looks are, they'd still be gang, referring to the fact that nothing could come close to the fact that he's already a weirdo who eats monsters. He makes them promise not to freak out, no matter how his appearance comes off to them, and they both put it on their mamas. When he finally takes off his helmet, they both freak out uncontrollably as they fall short of words to say. At Hexalim Guild, the adventurers gathered in the hall are busy discussing Maron, who is rumored to finally reveal his face that day. Since he belongs to the Messy Party, a group known for openly hating humans, some adventurers speculate that he might not even be human, but others argue against it because of his Kinslayer title. Before the debate can escalate, Anchorman steps in and calmly claims that Maron might just be an ordinary and innocent person. Without any hesitation, the adventurers agree with him, but the shady dude does not actually care about Maron's race. Anchorman wonders what Maron is hiding that previously made him run away. He then decides to create a plausible reason that will make the other adventurers point fingers at Maron and eventually force him out of the guild. Meanwhile, the assistant guild manager, Hellion, who's watching them from the second floor, complains about the adventurers wasting their energy on meaningless things instead of focusing on requests. The second receptionist, however, expresses concern about Maron, pointing out that the Messy Party's teamwork is high, and guesses that the problem might eventually affect their unity. Hellion, on the other hand, doesn't give a hoot about the wuss who can't show his face. He then lectures the second receptionist about why clients prefer adventurers over mercenaries, explaining that trust is the foundation. He recalls how mercenaries in the past abandoned missions over petty issues and were eventually used as expendable shields in large-scale operations. Adventurers, on the other hand, are more versatile, less likely to commit crimes, and can handle tasks beyond combat. This stigma forced many mercenaries to become adventurers, also contributing to the growth of the Hexalim Guild. In addition, Hellion admits that he doesn't like Ankerman either, but finds the circumstances surrounding Maron worrisome. Moments later, the Chaos Party arrives at the guild hall, and the other adventurers gossip about them. When the admin asks Maron if he's fine with being cornered in a public place, Dahlia senses his hesitation and tries to reassure him. He tells Maron to believe in them, and the wimp decides to do just that. Soon after, Maron takes off his helmet, and the revelation shocks everyone in the guild hall. Anchorman initially maintains his high and mighty act, but the moment he sees Maron's face, his expression collapses in shock. Maron's radiant beauty leaves the spectators questioning his race, since no ordinary human should look that beautiful. Some even doubt his gender, since he's way prettier than most women around there. As the rumors go around, Amitar claims it's not a big deal, but Dahlia reminds her about the previous night. The night Maron revealed his face to his party members, Dahlia and Imitar froze in astonishment. Imitar smashed his helmet and threatened to blow his head off if he ever deceived people with it again. Maron kept insisting that he's ugly, but Imitar tried to teach the scammer a lesson. Luckily for him, Dahlia held Imitar back and tried his best to calm the furious mutt. Thereafter, Dahlia asked why Maron viewed himself as a monster despite having such a pretty face, and Maron finally opened up. He sometimes remembers the accident from the past, which mixes with his current memories, making him forget what he really looks like. Fear and resistance also stopped him from checking his own face in the mirror. Back in the present, Maron wonders if he might be summoned to the royal castle if someone recognizes him. However, Dahlia and Imitar chase away the adventurers who are still staring. Some adventurers turn to Anchorman to ask for his opinion, but he's nowhere to be found. Elsewhere, Anchorman punches a wall as he vents his frustration in the alleys, but a criminal soon approaches him, attempting to rob him at blade point. Before the man can finish his demands, Anchorman swiftly decapitates him and wonders why Maron hid his face with a helmet. After connecting the dots, Anchorman convinces himself that Maron set a trap from the beginning. He believes Maron stole his first dungeon clear title and now intends to drag down his reputation as a hero. Just then, his underling arrives and asks if he has finished his business there. Anchorman responds with a fake smile and decides it's time to return to the capital. Following that, he orders the underling to clean up the remains of the rude dude who pointed a blade at him. The underling accepts the order and informs him that carriage arrangements will be made after he cleans up. Thinking inwardly, Anchorman concludes that Maron is plotting to steal his great fame and then vows to make him regret ever defying a hero. On the day of the Festival of the New Sun, which is celebrated in a drama as summer approaches, Music fills the streets, people dance under the blazing sun, and everyone indulges in rich food and fine alcohol. At a lively pub, Imitar clanks her cup with her party members and makes a toast, deciding to enjoy the festival properly and celebrate the results of their hard work. Shortly after, Dahlia notices the awkward expression on Marin's face while still radiating his beauty effortlessly. Imitar blames Marin's bummed-out expression on Dahlia, who made him try on clothes for 3 hours straight. Imitar adds that Dahlia looked possessed back then, claiming it was a bit scary. On the other hand, Marin says he doesn't need that many clothes. But Dahlia doesn't care about his opinion. Since he looks that good, Dahlia insists it is his responsibility to dress in a way that matches his face. Imitar also agrees and tells him to dress up more often, leaving Maron wondering how he somehow ended up being the one at fault. Not long after, it dawns on Maron that it's been so long since he went out without wearing his helmet. Almost immediately, some ladies passing by notice him and begin to admire his looks, but their stares make Maron uncomfortable. Imitar advises him to learn some fashion sense from Dahlia during the festive period, but soon sees the wuss covering his head with a paper bag. Both Dahlia and Imitar pressure him to take it off, but he's worried about other people's gaze. Remembering how long he has hidden behind a helmet, the party decides to give him time to adjust to showing his face in public. Suddenly, Marin hears the bard singing inside the pub while children dance happily to the melody. The sight and song take him down memory lane. In the past, a much younger Maron sat alone, watching the other children dance cheerfully. A nun approaches him and asks why he is not dancing, but he replies that he cannot dance. She tells him it doesn't matter, and then lectures him about festivals, explaining how everyone should have fun irrespective of dancing skills. She then pulls him into the group, and they dance alongside the other children. Back in the present, Marin continues staring at the bard and the dancing children. Upon noticing the music and dancing, Imitar asks about it, and Marin tells them about folk dancing. It interests Imitar, but Dahlia isn't interested in imitating the humans he despises so much. Imitar asks Marin to teach them how to folk dance, but he admits that he's not a good dancer. Still, Imitar insists it does not matter because she believes that festivals are for everyone to enjoy, and her words give Marin a strong sense of déjà vu. Ignoring Dahlia's protests, Imitar drags her and Marin to the dance floor. She also pulls off the paper bag on Marin's head, saying he does not need it to dance. The moment his face is revealed, the children are drawn to him and they invite him to dance with them. With that, Marin's 100-year void begins to close up slowly. While Dahlia and Imitar mercilessly roast Marin's terrible dancing skills, he keeps getting more attention. Soon after, Daisy arrives looking for the messy party and rushes over when she spots them. Imitar quickly tells her they took a break from requests, but she compliments Marin's outfit. Flustered, he covers his head again with the paper bag, but Dahlia claims it's pointless since everyone has already seen his face. Daisy then hands the party a request, saying it is not urgent. Curious, Imitar asks what kind of request it is. Daisy reveals that it is a nominated request specifically meant for their party, which leaves all of them stunned. Elsewhere, Lady Benita enjoys the life of nobility as a maid washes her feet while she sips expensive wine. Moments later, her butler receives some information on the person she's searching for and relays the news to her. She praises their efficient search network and then decides to meet the person. Another maid brings in a magic globe and it projects Marin's image into the air. Excited, Benita smirks and orders the servants to reward the informant as promised. As she leaves, she commands them to prepare the carriage and a dress because she intends to personally go and meet Marin. In the northern part of the continent, which is a barren highland area with a series of rugged mountain ranges, there are still people living there. The messy party arrives at the mining village called Tarik, and the constant clanging of metal echoes through the air, torturing Dahlia and Imitar's eardrums. The duo complains about the noise and thick smoke emanating from the furnaces there. Imitar complains about having to resume work in the northern region right after enjoying the festival, while Dahlia wonders aloud about the identity of the person who nominated them, especially since they only recently reached B-rank status. While staring at the request form, Marin thinks about the nomination system, which is usually reserved for high-ranking nobles. When he sees that the nominator is listed as the Golden Workshop, Morgano, he wonders if they're rich enough to make the nomination request since he has never heard the name. The entire situation feels suspicious to him, and he hopes the client does not make unreasonable demands. Following the rough directions provided, the party eventually arrives at a workshop, and Imitar casually knocks on the door. After waiting a while, she grows impatient and prepares to knock harder, but Dahlia stops her, warning that breaking things would only lead to unnecessary debts. As the two bicker about how to get a response, Marin notices a strange switch mounted beside the door. Guessing it might be some sort of doorbell, he presses it. The others immediately ask what he just did, but before he can explain properly, the workshop door opens, revealing a dwarf staring back at them. The dwarf glances over their appearances and quickly deduces that they are the messy party. He invites them inside, saying he has been expecting them, and asks them to wait for another person who will be joining shortly. While they wait, Imitar complains about the door's unnecessary complication, but at that moment, a female dwarf arrives and apologizes, claiming it's a technology that has not been commercialized. As she thanks them for answering her call, Dahlia and Imitar immediately recognize her as Lord Gnome and immediately fall to their knees to honor her. Gnome tells them to sit down and relax since it's not a formal meeting, leaving them stunned. Not long after, they sit together, and Emotar nervously asks Gnome why she called for them. With that, Gnome then explains the task, which is to procure special materials used in crafting weapons and armor. Having said that, she goes on to say that she recently learned about the nomination system and decided to nominate their party after noticing a familiar name. Dahlia and Imitar are moved to tears. feeling honored that Gnome remembers their name, but their reactions confuse Maron. Shortly after, Marin recalls that Gnome returned to her hometown some time ago and asks why she's still in a human village. Gnome admits that she wants to learn a technique that is very important for craftsmen. She then briefs them about the dwarves' devotion to blacksmithing since ancient times, which is why other countries' technologies can't catch up to theirs. However, they have been neglecting other technologies because of the new trend, and they began to decline. Due to the impending revival of the Demon Lord, even the dwarves in her hometown are only obsessed with making arms and armor. Gnome doesn't consider it true development because there's no progress in the living standards. She then tells them about the intriguing technique she discovered in the human kingdom, and it surprises Maron. Before she can go further, Dahlia asks what kind of human technique could interest dwarves, who are considered the pinnacles of technology. Dahlia and Imotar freeze in disbelief when Gnome reveals its cooking technique. She narrates how everyone just eats whatever gives them the strength to continue working, rather than a tasty meal. Dissatisfied with that lifestyle, she decides not to return to her motherland until she masters proper cooking techniques. Afterwards, Gnome asks them to tell her about their cooking culture later, but Dahlia and Imotar instinctively look to Maron. Gnome then redirects the conversation back to the main objective and tells them to listen carefully as she briefs them on the request. Later that day, the messy party enters a dungeon known as the Cave of Night, but the area is very dark. On Dahlia's request, Imotar illuminates the area with magic, and Dahlia reads through the request form. He informs the others about the materials they need to find. Thereafter, Imotar notes that there aren't minerals or monsters there, but Dahlia says they have to enter further to encounter them. On the other hand, Maron begins contemplating what kind of monster would make a delicious meal for the dwarves, while hoping they might be more open to well-prepared monster cuisine than humans. Sensing his thoughts, Dahlia and Imotar immediately panic, deciding to stop him at all costs. As they move further in, they discover some minerals, but Dahlia quickly confirms they are not what they are searching for. Imotar then suggests going a little further inside. Suddenly, Dahlia's ears twitch as he picks up an unfamiliar sound, and Imotar warns them that something is approaching. Before they can locate it, the creature bursts through the cave wall, sending debris that knocks Imotar to the ground. Dahlia quickly checks on her and confirms she is unhurt, but Imotar urgently tells him to look behind. To Dahlia's surprise, he turns around and sees a bull-like monster known as Catoblepas. Marin takes his stance, noting that the monster doesn't have a high level, and that's why most adventurers tend to let their guards down. But what's truly dangerous is the Cyclopean eye, because if one looks at it directly, they would turn to stone. Dahlia asks Marin if he's ready, and he states that he'll attack the creature once Marin pins it down, as they have planned. Marin then activates the mind's eye while noting that if he can neutralize the monster's eye, then he can capture it without much issue. Also, if he takes out the eye, his teammates won't get hurt. The monster closes in on him and smacks Marin out of the way, or so everyone thought. Marin instinctively grabs the horns and stops it in its tracks with brute strength. Immediately, Dahlia and Imotar charge in to help Marin, telling Marin to hold the monster for a moment. But Marin strikes the Cyclopean eye with a headbutt, causing the monster to growl. The others are taken aback, and they tell Marin that they'll handle the rest. But then the creature screams from the impact and falls to the ground, and they are shocked by his strength. Marin, on the other hand, tells them his helmet has broken. So Imotar happily pulls it off and calls it a good thing, since they have something to comfort the monster's soul. Marin then shyly replies that he doesn't feel safe without a helmet, and his hot looks strike Imotar squarely, and she blushes and feels guilty. She then asks Dahlia how he feels about Marin's face, and Dahlia tells her that no matter Marin's good looks, he is still the same monster eater on the inside. The man of the hour observes his prey and cuts the hind legs, believing it'll be more tasty, since that's where the monster generates power from. More than ever, his teammates advise him against eating the meat because catoblepas are highly poisonous, but Maron adds an antidote to the meat, and then cuts it into bite sizes that'll fit his mouth. Just from the look of the meat, Marin admits that it looks questionable, but when he picks it up, he notes that it's softer and more moist than he thought, which is far different from what he had imagined. Dahlia warns him once more about how poisonous the monster is, but Maron reassures them that it's fine and tries it out, disregarding their warnings. After giving it a few chews, Maron notes that it tastes like beef, but the texture is very similar to fish. As he savors the taste, he's shocked when the meat melts on his tongue, so he thinks of how well it'll look if grilled on a steak. Imotar, who has been keenly observing Maron, gets tempted to try the meat out, but Dahlia snaps her out of it by reminding her that Maron is the very definition of different, and she shouldn't be fooled by his face. She agrees with Dahlia, and they grit their teeth while watching Marin commit a taboo. After trying some out, Marin stores the rest in his storage window and plans to grill it later. Right after, poison kicks in, and Marin bleeds from his mouth. As if expecting it, Imotar runs to catch him while Dahlia sighs from frustration. As Imotar heals Maron, she insults him for not learning, and Marin is shocked because the antidote didn't work. He suddenly receives a notification from his status window and learns he has gotten the pain tolerance skill. After getting patched up, he informs the others about the new skill, and Dahlia tells him that information about it has already been circulated by the guild, and that's why many people have it. Dahlia reveals that to get the pain tolerance skill, one needs to commit self-poisoning to themselves a certain number of times using toxins strong enough to cause pain. Marin is shocked by the information, and it pisses Imotar, who had to learn status ailment removal because of Marin's tantrums. After confirming that Marin is okay, Dahlia tells him to get up and join them in search of the whetstone. They return shortly afterwards to the blacksmith, and they are told that the master craftsman is in the middle of some important work, so they should wait for a bit. After waiting for a while, Imitar notes that she's bored since their mission ended early, but just then she realizes she hasn't eaten, and in that moment, she gets a whiff of an aroma coming from Marin's plate, and she sees it's fried harpy. Dahlia immediately scolds Marin for bringing the monster's meat to Lord Gnome's workshop, but Marin reminds them that they haven't eaten. The already starving Imotar cooks up an excuse, saying it's fine if Marin eats it before the gnome comes back. As Marin prepares to dig into the meal, he sees Imitar drooling, so he offers her some, and she instantly grabs the offer, chewing and savoring the taste. Dahlia, on the other hand, feels betrayed, so he scolds Imotar, but then she defends herself by saying she wanted to finish eating before Lord Gnome shows up. Unfortunately for her, the princess appears right behind her and asks Imitar what she's talking about. She then spots the food and asks them what it is, but Dahlia and Imitar cover it up, saying it's nothing. This makes the lady curious, so she asks them to give her one of the dishes as well, and she notes that she's looking forward to trying human food culture.